Weakness haunts us all. You won't admit it. Not everybody will admit it. You won't say the truth. You want to be great. And there's a reason that movie where you could take a pill and suddenly every discipline and idea that came out of your head was life-changing was a bestseller. Because if you could bottle that and give it to any man or woman, you would take it. So today, we're going to figure out how to give you that pill. How to turn you into what Bruce Springsteen said. I'm not afraid you're better than me. I'm afraid I won't reach my potential. That's not fear of failure. That's fear of a life half-lived, a tombstone that tragically reads dots, an obituary that looks like a half-finished manuscript. That will be most people's lives, but it doesn't need to be yours. So today we're going to kill that part inside of you. Welcome back to the Big Deal podcast. I'm Codie Sanchez, and I've spent the last decade negotiating deals, firing people, being fired, sitting across from billionaires, manipulators, and people who quite literally run the world. And here's the thing I learned the hard way. If you have nothing right now, or if you feel like you're not where you want to be, or if you feel like you don't have a leg up, or if you feel like you don't have a silver bullet, I don't think you have to worry about that. Because you know what? I also was all I had. There was no backup plan. There was no fancy pedigreed school. There was no big trust fund. There was nothing. And so if there isn't for you either, that's okay. Because if you feel lost, you're not lazy or stupid. You can just be adrift. And that is what this episode is about today. I'm going to tell you how to kill that small, terrified thing inside of you that constantly subverts you and holds you back. And we're going to do it with data and lessons learned the hard way. Let's go with the first lesson, which is how do you kill weakness? You starve it. Let's get something straight. Weakness does not disappear when you ignore it. It grows and negotiates with you and rationalizes. It waits until you're tired and then it takes advantage of you. And most people let that happen quietly because you don't kill weakness with motivation. You kill it with standards. And we're going to get to what the data is specifically on this. But what do I mean? It means I want you to change your verbiage. So I just was talking to Tony Robbins and he said something that really messed me up. He said, do you want to do it? Are you going to do it? Or have you already resolved to do it? Meaning, is it in the past tense, like it's already done? If you're already this type of person that has done this thing, you are more likely to do it. So I know this is a little goofy, but I cannot for the love of me get 10,000 steps a day. Or at least that was the story I told myself all of last year. I know that's not that serious, but I work a lot and I'm sitting a lot and I work out every day, but I wanted to be the type of person that, I don't know, gets vitamin D. And so I said, I resolved to be the type of person that does this. Guess what? Every single day since I met with that giant motherfucker of a man, I've done it. I'm averaging like 12,000 steps. It's basically a marathon. I don't want to make a big deal about it, but I will. And one of the secrets I want to tell you about is how to get rid of that part inside you, whatever it is. And how do you get rid of the person that you were before? So I knew I was having a hard time hitting my little goal. And you know what that means? You know what I did? I said, I am not just going to hit 10K a day. I'm going to hit 20. Why? Because that means I'm more likely to hit 15. You don't negotiate with that little weak bitch inside of you. You're like, all right, I can't do 10. I'm going to do 20. Instead, I want you to picture that like military drill sergeant yelling at you. And if you think, okay, Codie, whatever, you guru who suddenly gets everything done. No, this is backed on data because I believe in standards as greater than feelings. In fact, one of my favorite studies from the American Psychological Association talked about basically self-control predicts academic achievement, health, and money success. So the study basically went like this. They followed a group of people for decades that showed that if they could control themselves for longer, that had a higher predisposition to them achieving big things in life. It was called the marshmallow study, famously. So it wasn't IQ or motivation. It was, as a little kid, could you not eat the marshmallow when you weren't supposed to? How long could you not eat the marshmallow? And could you continue that throughout your life? The cool part is that you can actually turn yourself into the type of person that has self-control or delayed gratification. And one of the ways you do that is what I call the starvation framework. So everything that you do today, I want you to think about, how do I hold off on that little tiny marshmallow so that I can move forward faster? The second tip that's really helped me is your inner circle will ruin or save your life. I know this is a little dramatic, but one bad influence can absolutely change the type of human that you are. This can happen in your business, your discipline, because the people who rely on you, well, you are also relying on them. You got to keep that circle tight. I asked Charlemagne the God, about success and pressure because he's been in the game for decades and decades and decades and just did a $200 million deal. He said something that stuck with me. He said, everybody wants to sit at the table, but not everybody deserves to eat. That's true. Most people let whoever is nearby eat whatever they got. That's lazy. I want you to audit your circle like your future depends on it because unfortunately, or fortunately, it does. And this part is so painful because you have to leave behind in many different ways versions of you and versions of people you used to think look like friends. I hate to tell you the hard part here. I have 2 friends from my time in high school. 2, that's it. Everybody else, gone. I have maybe 0 friends from college. I mean, I did go to Arizona State Party School of the West, not exactly Harvard, but I don't talk to anybody that I went to college from. And I know that sounds kind of messed up, but when you're growing as fast as I needed to, because I was in college, a drinking too much, partying too much, kind of enjoying sorority life, lots of drama type of person, I had to up-level the people that I was around. The people I was around at that time, they wouldn't make it in my world today. And that may be the same for you. And guess what? Let me give you some permission, baby. That is okay. I wish them nothing but love, success, winning. But I don't wish them in my circle. So look around you. Who's in yours? And the data backs this up too. In fact, I went and tried to have non-confirmation bias and said, is there any data that supports that the people around you don't matter? And you know what the answer is? No. In fact, a study from Harvard and University of California at San Diego called the social network effects on behavior says, behavior, discipline, ambition, and even obesity spread through social networks up to 3 degrees of separation, meaning your circle can actually make you fat, which is wild. Your circle can also make you rich. They call this the proximity effect. So you don't rise to your goals, you fall to the standards of those closest to you. So think about where you work, where you hang, where you love, because that is going to be your future. The next lesson I learned was that work ethic eliminates fear. Michael Jordan said it perfectly. That's what he said. He said work ethic eliminates fear. So fear only exists where preparation doesn't. You're not scared because you're incapable. You're scared because you haven't earned certainty yet. Am I right? And here's the part most people don't like. You don't get confidence before the work. You get it after. I don't know. You might even be scared because maybe like me, what if you try your hardest more than you've ever tried in your entire life and you still fail? What if you're still not good enough? What if that's the little part inside of you that is actually stopping you? But hey, let's at least be equal. What if the flip side of that is you're never going to know that you could be better than you ever thought? You got to test the limits of where you are as a human. Otherwise, you'll never know where they end. So do the irrational. Go harder than you want to go. I know right now it's not popular to say work harder. And you know what? I don't really care about that. I disagree with that. I think right now we're at a tentpole moment with AI where people who use AI to become better will become superhumans. They'll just be smarter, richer, and better than most of us. It scares the shit out of me, actually. So if you don't believe it, I wrote part of this idea Saturday, January 12th at 11:36 a.m. And for the past 35 minutes, I've been working on creating apps with Claude Code. I hate it. I hate every moment of it. I'm not a technologist, but I got to learn this stuff. On the internet, everybody's like, oh, it's so easy programming with, it's not easy for me. I'm learning all these words like proximity and feature versus tool and repositories and terminal, and I don't know anything about it and it scares the shit out of me. And because I'm scared, I'm going to work really hard to make sure that I understand it. So can you do the same thing? What scares you so much that you have to do what I do, which is schedule the hackathon for my company so that anybody who is as freaked out as I was could come and do the thing that scares you by outworking the fear? And for many years, I was so afraid of transitioning from my cushy Wall Street career to my ultimate dream of becoming a business owner. It was an irrational fear that kept my dreams at bay for way too long. And since I bought my first laundromat and began my journey in ownership, I've made it my mission to help educate others who are like me, maybe scared of their big, huge dreams. And that's why I created Main Street Millionaire Live. It's a yearly workshop I run to help future business owners find and buy the right business for you. It's the kind of knowledge you'd normally have to pay 6 figures for, but I refuse to do that. So if you've ever been business buying curious, click the link below to learn more about Main Street Millionaire Live. I cannot wait to help you achieve your goals and get rid of that little inner bitch inside of you too. The next lesson that I learned is that setting goals you never reach is one of the unfair unlocks in life. We talked about it briefly in the beginning with my huge goal of 10,000 steps a day, but David Goggins talks about how most of us only use 40% of our ability. And I think that's true. I was actually talking to my husband, And we realized something strange about the greats. Like I'm talking Napoleon, Marcus Aurelius. They never achieved their goals because their goals were so big, they were almost unachievable, which means that the things they did along the way, they're pretty extraordinary by default. And I want you to think about that same thing for you. I went to the research on this and they call this the goal setting theory of motivation. So Locke and Latham did this experiment where they saw that people who set difficult, specific goals consistently outperform those who set achievable or vague goals, even when the goals are not fully reached, which I like to think about this as like that cliche, which is if you shoot for the moon, at least you'll land among the stars, which actually isn't reasonable because the stars are further than the moon, which is why they're smaller than the moon. But we won't get into the real science right here. But I think that this is true. It sounds cliche, except it's right. So what if you're not actually achieving the goals you really want because you haven't set them big enough? One of the things I told my husband this year for one of our companies, I want to do $100 million in revenue. And for that company in particular, that's kind of a crazy goal right now because that's just not where the company's at. But what it forces you is to ask yourself, what would a company have to do to grow to that level? And it was scary, I think, for both of us. But what it means is it force functions you to go, okay, we literally cannot do the same thing we're doing right now, which means by default, we're probably going to be bigger than we would if we were just to say, increase it by 5 or 10 million. Now, I know those numbers are kind of big, but whatever those numbers are for you, I got goals that are 10,000 steps. I got goals that are $100 million companies. It's all the same process. But I do think if you want to lose 5 pounds, shoot for 30. Because if you shoot for 30, I bet as far as shit, you are going to lose those 5. The next lesson I kind of was obsessing on was that you got to stop normalizing comfort. And I'll tell you something else unhinged. I find the idea of sleeping in and sick days to be totally disinteresting. Like, what is the point of life if not to push yourself to greatness? And how do you do that? Well, you don't sleep in. That's for one. You listen to the greats, and not me that you're listening to here, but all the ideas that I bring along and try to bring along for both of us. You work out with the greats if you want to be jacked. You read the greats, and you join teams full of the greats. And you never allow yourself to say, it must be nice. Yeah, sure, it worked out for him because, no. Instead, you ask yourself, what can I learn from these people? And how do I steal their homework? Because if you're not willing to suffer for something, you don't really want it. So back in the day when I worked at jobs I hated, like Goldman Sachs in Chicago in the middle of winter, I used sick days like you couldn't imagine. Like every chance I got, I marked them all off for the year. And now I love what I do. So that's not really part of the equation. But I guess I would ask you to push on that a little bit. Like if you feel like you really need sick days and massive time off, you might just need them sometimes. Sometimes it's like you don't need to quit, you need a fucking nap. But other times, are you not being more curious in your job? Could you not learn more? Could you not go deeper? You're worn out from a groove maybe instead of the fact that you're not capable to do more. And so, the research on this is fascinating. There's something called the comfort crisis we have. And it comes out from the Mayo Clinic. And there was a science looking at stress adaptation studies. Basically what that means is that performance improves with stress up to an optimal point. So too little stress equals stagnation, not safety. Humans are actually wired to grow under pressure, not comfort. And so if you're feeling a little too comfortable, get the fuck out of that bed. Get up out of the bed in the morning. Do what I do. Listen to David Goggins. Have him yell at you. Come on here. I'll yell at you. I promise I'll bully you into making your life better. And the next lesson that I learned is that you have to accept that elite requires unhinged. I think I've said the word unhinged here like 3 or 5 times already. To do most things at the highest level, you have to be fucking unhinged. You have to not be normal. That's what's required. And I thought about this in particular to women. And so, I've heard a lot about the soft girl era thing. And listen, I don't think you have to be pushed all the time. You can be pulled, you can attract, you can be in flow state, you can blah, 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 blah. But also women, you're savages. Talk about yourself better, women. Think about what you do for a minute. You create life by letting a 10-pound little mini human tear through the most sensitive part of your body after growing it inside of you for 9 months like a fucking alien out of a movie. You are not fragile. You are not soft girl era. You're extremely powerful. And so I don't think being savage is unfeminine, actually. It's earned. So I don't like that you sell yourself short. I want you to be unhinged. That's okay. For instance, I've never been happier than lifting weights. I don't know what it is about it. I think if you're unhappy today, if you're struggling, go to the gym, throw up heavier weights than you feel comfortable with. Yeah, you could hurt yourself, blah, 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 but you're more likely to hurt yourself from eating too many Cheetos, sitting on the couch and dying from diabetes like most of society does. So go throw up some heavy lead and watch and see how strong you actually feel. And this goes back to one of my favorite studies of all time, Angela Duckworth. I believe it was the University of Pennsylvania or Pittsburgh. She talks about perseverance and passion for long-term goals comes from grit. And so she basically did this analysis of elite performers and saw that it was not about talent or IQ or education or history. It was, do they display sustained intensity and obsession, she terms that grit, over long time horizons, even when social norms discourage it. Like the woman who is pregnant but has always been a heavy lifter and keeps heavy lifting. All the doctors like, lay down, sweetie, you're fine. She's like, fuck off. Women have been carrying pails on their heads for millennia. I'm not a doctor. Don't listen to any of my medical advice ever on this channel. I have no idea what I'm talking about from a medical perspective, but I do know what it takes from a psychological perspective. All right, the next lesson I want us to talk about is you don't get paid to play the game. This was so good when I heard this for the first time. And I can't remember who it was, but the line that I want you to remember is that you don't get paid to play the game. You get paid to practice. The game is the highlight, the stage, the awards, the applause. That is not what the money is for. The money is for the boring, invisible, humiliating work that happens long before anyone claps. And, Don Draper has this incredible, little moment, which we should clip in from Mad Men, when he's like, that's what the money is for. And he wasn't wrong. The real reward isn't somebody giving you applause or thanking you, or even actually the money. The real reward is the work. And once you understand that, everything changes. Because it always made me chuckle. Like last couple of years, I've been on stages, right? Or getting an award or something. And I'd have somebody come up to me and be like, I want to do what you do on stages like this. I want to get paid to be on stage. And I remember thinking in my head, I don't get paid for this. I get paid not for being on a stage. I get paid for, a 155-page PowerPoint, messing with the graphics, doing the research, finding the data, pulling it together on Excel, pivot table, putting up here, practicing for hundreds of hours. That's what I get paid to do. This part I basically do for free. The stage is the reward. That's the dessert. It's not the baking. You don't get paid to eat the dessert. You get paid to be the chef making it. So practice, that's what you get paid for, not the game. And then we got to be honest with ourselves. If we want to kill that little weak inner bitch inside of us, we got to stop pitying weakness, including your own. Arnold said it so perfectly. Everybody pities the weak. You have to earn the jealous. That's Schwarzenegger, by the way. I'm not going to do an accent because you guys don't want that from me here. But I mean, doesn't that just feel right? Like everybody pities the weak, but you have to earn the jealous. I feel like it feels like the gospel. I remember the first time I heard it, I got chills. And there's another truth most people won't say out loud, which is weak people don't attack strength because it's wrong. They attack it because it reminds them of what they refuse to become. It reminds them of what they aren't. And, when I first got on the internet a couple years ago, I literally, can't believe I'm going to admit this, I cried when somebody said something mean about me on the internet the first time. I cried. It ruined my whole day. I just thought about all the reasons that they were wrong and how dare they, and they don't even know me, and you don't even have personality privileges. Now you're going to talk shit about me. How could you hate me? And I would just spiral and spiral and spiral. And it was so hard for me. And then I just kept getting hate and I got inoculated against it. And I kid you not, people will say the most ludicrous, mean things about me on the internet. Like I've had people call me a man and say it's all because of daddy's money and you don't even own any businesses and how dumb are you and what low IQ, low bred, blah, blah, Latina, idiot, all the things. And you know what I do now? I fucking chuckle. I think about them zero and then I think, God, I own more real estate rent-free in your head than you do in real life. And you're giving me a little mansion inside that tiny little brain of yours. And I just picture myself stomping around, having a party, kicking the door through. I'm just in here having a great time in your tiny little pea brain. And it's fun for me. And so remember, if somebody's thinking about you, somebody's talking about you, that's because you're doing something. And I think I remember I've become internet friendly with this guy by the name of Cameron Hanes. And he has this book, Undeniable, and he had this one line that hit me in the chest. And he says, I'd rather die than be average. And that's not insanity. I mean, he is kind of sane, actually. If you don't know him, he literally runs a marathon in the morning before breakfast every single day. He carries a 130-pound rock up a mountain every day, and then he shoots a bow and arrow, and then he goes to the gym, and he has a full-time job, and he's got kids and a wife. I mean, the man is kind of an absolute psychopath. And his kids are too. I actually saw the other day that one of his kids is setting world records running marathons in jeans. But I think that is this refusal to negotiate with weakness. And it's pretty funny because if you ask him every day, Cam, you're what if you're sick? What if it's raining? What if it's every day? Every day means every day. Every day means every day. And it's interesting because my immediate reaction is oh, he's probably going to die. I don't know if he's going to make it. But you know what? I'm pretty sure most people don't actually die from pushing too hard these days. We're not climbing Everest. People die every day from giving up early on your health, your business, your potential. And you know what? You got a ton of people already that will tell you to slow down, chill out, take a rest, take a bubble bath, have some self-care. I don't think you come here for that from me. I'm here to tell you to full send it, motherfucker. And I think, the final part that I want to leave you with is you don't need confidence. I mean, here's the most freeing thing I've learned. People who are great are not great because they believe they are. They are great because they're always trying to prove themselves, because they know how flawed they are, which is incredible news. And take that for a second. You know why I'm any good? Because I wake up every morning, I kid you not, this must mean I'm well adjusted. And I go, fuck, I should have done that yesterday. What about that? I got this new thing I need to do. I wondered that. Oh man, even when I'm talking to my person who helps me work out, what's that called? Personal trainer. I only notice she'll give me all these compliments. I go, yeah, but I noticed this over here. There's no positivity in here, but I'm very happy because I'm trying to get better every single day. So you don't need to believe you're special. I'm not special. You don't need to believe you're a superstar. I'm not a superstar. All you need to do is keep trying. That compounds. So if you're lost right now, good. That means you're between versions. Just don't stay there, because weakness may haunt us all, but it only wins if you let it. All right, thanks for letting me yell at you today. I really am glad you're here. Let's hang out again next week. Maybe I'll be nicer. No, I won't. Bye.
We are sitting on a generational wealth creation event. If you're here, this means you're a builder. As we're going through these next 3 days, I want you to know that the American dream starts with you guys by our little Main Street revolution.
And then I just want to give you guys permission to take a leap of faith.
If I knew then what I know now, I would probably do bigger deals.
It's given us an extra layer of security that we never would have had.
I am so excited to introduce you to some ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
We have to really take the time to make a meaningful connection. It's the fact that there is a lack of connection and the person just wants to be seen, heard, and understood.
Thanks for taking the question.
Are there extra things that need to be done when trying to pay off bad debt?
Great question.
I buy businesses so simple, even your grandmother understands them. That's the game.
It's you and me versus the problem. We're going to try to solve this together.
I know how to build trust in a very advanced way.
How does buying a business fit into the vision for your life?
Today, my goal is to teach you some fundamental skills that you can use to accelerate your business.
If you make a promise in the mirror, know that your word is freaking iron to you.
These people on Wall Street, they want to keep the normal people out of the game.
Main Street millionaires are all around this world, and it starts with each and every one of you. What are you waiting for? Your path to ownership starts now. Get your ticket to join us on Main Street. Join us today.
UFC fighter.
I work, the more purpose-driven I am, ultimately makes me the best husband I can possibly be. Besides a very, very, very tiny fraction of the entire populace, we're all replaceable.
Hey, and welcome back. It's Codie Sanchez, and this is the Big Deal podcast for those who don't just want to be rich, but be free and do what it actually takes to get there. Okay, today I have a treat for you. This is a long-form interview with a real man in, dare I say, a world of boys who's become a friend, Mike Chandler. So he's a UFC fighter. He won the Bellator championship 3 times, slated to fight Conor McGregor, and also oddly one of the nicest humans I've ever had the pleasure to become friends with. Now, Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. And Mike and I joked about that because it turns out that's true. And it's useful kind of to talk to those who have been repeatedly face punched and still keep their demons in their mind at bay. So you should listen to this if you want to be more mentally strong, you wonder how to take control of a life and a childhood that was hard, you wonder what it's like to be inside the mind of a champion, and you want to have it all, like an incredible career, a six-pack, beautiful wife and children, like he does. So I think we should get into it. What do you think?
I completely agree. And before we even jump into stuff, I feel like you should read something that you wrote the other day.
So here's my contrarian idea. I think sometimes you need a story to tell yourself when life is hard, when you're losing, and you don't even want to get out of bed. And so I wrote this to remind myself of that. It's the dark of the night. My alarm says 12:44 a.m., but my brain says sleep no more. The world outside is loud, pounding, insatiable, and it will not settle. A running to-do list races through my mind, marching like incessant ants in a line. Then I remember every army needs a general. So I throw off the covers and relegate sleep to a future self. We've got work to do. God gave us a body filled with capacity, a horde straining to break free. Better use it. The coffee pot whistles happily, thrilled at being used for its true capacity. Happy to have an early friend to start the day. My pen traces paper, taking ideas out of my head and onto the one place where they can't slip away from me so easily. It's quiet. No emails coming in, no pings, just me in the night. That feeling of purpose, of execution, of getting done flows through me. I'm convinced there's no greater sensation than creating exactly what you should. The architect drafting his building, the brick mason laying his final cornerstone, the writer's words to books, the farmer sowing seeds. So this day, this morning, wherever you are, settle not for sleep. See what you are actually capable of. The world is waiting for it. All right. So before we get into Mike, ask yourself, do you have a story so strong it'll pull you out of sleep and complacency? And if you don't, you can steal some of his. I really like this part.
Bring the band in. Let's go.
I think the little man and the everyday man in the US is sort of getting crushed by the big, the big companies, the big banks, the big government. And increasingly there's a nation of men and women who sort of feel purposeless and a little bit powerless. And when I read your story, I was really inspired by the fact that you started and self-proclaimed are a everyday man from a small town who became something a little bit bigger. And so I'd be curious to hear from you in your words. What was that journey like?
Well, I think eventually every big shot is just a small shot that never stops shooting. You just got to keep on going. I was a small guy from a small town. I was taught to do small things. The people I was around, my closest of kin, my closest of community, there wasn't a lot of gumption heading toward the outside of those county lines, It was even a gamble for me to go 2 hours west of me to go to Mizzou and walk on to the University of Missouri wrestling team when everybody said, why are you going to go do that? Why are you going to go ride the bench? Why are you going to go? What if you never wrestle? What if you quit? What if you come back with your hat in your hand and we can all say, I told you so? And I think so many of us have been put into a box, whether it be our upbringing, whether it be the people around us, whether it be our own self-sabotaging self-talk or self-sabotaging vision and view and self-image and self-concept of ourselves. And I still battle that little guy from that little town every single day. He's still inside. I've just got really good at duct taping him to the basement of my mind and continuing to believe that if I work hard, I operate with integrity, if I meet the right people, if I'm nice to and serve the right people, they will in turn serve me, and it will in turn serve me, my greater purpose, my greater mission. And then eventually things will work out. And some days it feels like I'm treading water, and some days it feels like I'm shooting to the moon. But I think that's the essence of our human condition. You're never going to feel 100% happy with where you're at. You're never going to feel 100% like you did every single thing that you needed to do. But all in all, success or growth, becoming the man or woman you're supposed to be on the other side is just a bunch of small decisions every single day, a little bit of hard work every single day that adds up to the big success, and it's worked out well for me. Went from wrestling to mixed martial arts and winning some world titles, and now in the biggest fight I could ever ask for.
It's actually wild because you talk a lot about mental toughness. And in particular, I believe you have a mindset coach, not just a boxing coach and not a growth coach, but a coach that helps you, as you've mentioned, like slay the dragons or lock a dragon in a room that shouldn't be let out. Talk to me about that. Why a mindset coach?
And I've had numerous over the years and specific mentors. And even, we're sitting here at Operation Blackside. I mean, these are the guys that I want to be able to call. I want them to call me when they think, hey, I need something. I want to be like these guys here, like the leaders here. We are the sum total of the people that we hang out with or aspire to be like. And obviously today, the world is so connected because I can just hit follow to a million different people and feel like I'm in their lives. But ultimately, if you're doing something impactful with your life, if you're trying your hardest, if you're operating with integrity, you hold your reputation to a very high regard, then eventually those people start being attracted to you as much as you were attracted to them. I had a mindset coach that I've worked with on and off, and we really did. It wasn't necessarily forward-thinking self-image. How do I get to where I'm going to go? Who am I now? What do I stand for? Who is Michael Chandler? What is my story? What are the lies that I've been telling myself for the last 30-something years? What are the pitfalls that I continue to fall back into, the valleys I continue to fall back into because of the way I see myself, the stories that I've told myself, and what do I stand for? I think a lot of us are wandering generalities instead of meaningful specifics, knowing exactly who we are, what we want to do, and what we want to accomplish. It's okay to embark on a journey with no virtual certainty of success or even close to success or even close to it working out the way we want it to work out. But if we move forward by not knowing exactly who we are and what we stand for, you're kind of just a wandering generality, and it's much harder to get from point A to point B. So for me, it was trying to figure out, who am I? Yeah. Who am I when I show up as my wife's husband? Who am I when I show up as my kid's dad? Who am I when I show up in a business meeting? Or who am I when I show up in a cage in front of millions of people? All of those questions can be answered before the actual moment. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of introspection and a lot of writing and a lot of thinking, a lot of visualization. And as you alluded to, some dragons I've been able to slay, and some of them I've just been really good at pushing into a corner and being able to manage them, being okay with them being there for the rest of my life, knowing that that's a part of my story. It's one of the chains and the links in the chain of this huge life that I'm going to live here on this earth, and just being okay with constant and never-ending improvement, but knowing who I am, what I stand for, who I want to serve, whose I am, and growing every single day.
Yeah, it's funny because every time I embark on a new business venture, I don't usually call them coaches, but a consultant. So like, if I want to start a new business, I want to go to try to hire the best person I can to start that new business. And the same thing if we're struggling in an area, maybe I need a new sales coach. And so, I get them with a call a week and we break down the stuff that I don't know technically how to do. But I think if you would have told me a year ago, Cody, you need a mindset coach, I would have been like, what sort of nonsense is that? Like fluffy, what? And then I would have felt like, oh, I'm going to spend money on that? And you seem like a tough guy, obviously. And yet, did you ever feel that way? Or how did you get past the idea, if you ever had it, that, that might be fluffy, or it's not a coach who's going to teach you how to hook better, or is going to teach you how to do something tactically better?
Well, I think ultimately, every single thing that we do, every single thing that we say, everything that we feel, every single aspect of our life always really does go back to our self-image, our self-concept, how we see ourselves, how deserved are we of success? How deserved are you of even embarking on the next business venture? Who are you to think that these people are going to watch, tune in, buy, want the services, or, what is the story that you're telling yourself? And I think for me, I always had such a lowly view of what I brought to the table that I needed to start doing a lot of work, And so ultimately, whenever that cage door closes and Bruce Buffer's screaming my name and says, it's time, and all that kind of stuff, it's not the punches, kicks, knees, and elbows. It's not the techniques. It's not the game plans. It's not all these these tactical black and white binary things that people think it is. It really is, do I believe that I am better than that man and I should beat that man tonight here in the middle of this octagon? And that's the same that's true in business, same as that is true in your relationships. It's the same that is true in every single aspect of life. You can be really, really, really tactically good at something, and you can find success year after year or season after season. But eventually, if the self-image itself isn't keeping pace with that, eventually there's going to be burnout, there's going to be self-sabotage, there's going to be things that you're going to fall into to make sure that you don't reach that level, because a man or a woman can never consistently perform in a manner that's inconsistent with the way that they see themselves. You can find success here and there, like we said, tactically. You can be very good tactically at certain things, but eventually to find that long, drawn out, consistent year over year success, it all goes back to the self-image. So for me, I realized that, and I also realize who I am when I step inside of a cage in front of millions of people and I look like a tough guy and I look ripped and I look like that guy, right? They could be on a movie behind King Leonidas on 300, right? I look like that guy, right? But ultimately, that doesn't mean a dang thing if right here between my ears, I don't actually see myself that way and I don't think that I deserve to be there. Ultimately, I realized that the mindset side of things, the self-image side of things was it was definitely more important than the tactical side of things.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, I'm trying to imagine, like I'm sure many people do, that, you're in this octagon, you're in this cage, and, it's getting towards the end of the fight, and you are out of breath, and you've taken a few hits, and you can't feel your legs anymore, and you're maybe vaguely aware of the audience shouting the other guy's name. Like, what does it take mentally, and what do you say to yourself in that moment to keep going?
Yeah, well, I think it's the decisions that I've made leading up to that moment, whether it be my 5 years at Mizzou Wrestling, where I turned myself into a mixed martial artist, or at least the spiritual being of where I needed to be to go into mixed martial arts, then work on the tactical stuff. All of the work that I've done over the last 14 years to get to that moment. And a lot of that goes back to a couple different things. Gratitude. I do believe I'm operating my best when I'm extremely grateful. When I wake up every single morning, I thank God for another day, the blessings in my life, what I do have. 2 capable arms, 2 capable legs, an awesome platform, a voice to speak, people that look to me and admire me, all of these different things that we can sometimes forget about. I'm very good at just going straight, blinders on, and just running my head into a brick wall, and you tell me to go and I'll go, right? If you're my coach, say, okay, I'll run through that brick wall if you tell me to. But ultimately, being grateful for what I have, and then thinking too, it all started too with Mike and Betty Chandler back in High Ridge, Missouri, my mom and dad, who worked 2 and 3 jobs nonstop to make sure me and my 2 brothers had every opportunity to be successful, to be to where I am today. Sitting here on this chair, speaking to you with the platform I have and the life that I've created for my family now, it all started back with those gifts they gave me. And to give anything less than my best every single day and pour myself into everything that I do, is to sacrifice those gifts, is to literally, it's a slap in the face to them. So gratitude, thinking about what they did for me, and then now having the woman of my dreams and having my 2 sons, and now it's so much bigger than just me. If I lose a fight, no big deal. Maybe I lose a little bit of money. Maybe I lose a world ranking. It means so much more for the masterpiece that I'm painting for my 2 sons, the promise that I made to my wife to serve and protect and love and to provide for her. So I have the past that has motivated me and still motivates me. I have my present right now with my family, and ultimately an overarching theme of gratitude. So in that moment, I'm honestly just operating with the muscle memory and the neural pathways and my spirit and my soul continuing to push me forward through all of the hard work, all of the deposits in the bank, if you will, that has led me to that moment to where I can push through, and people are wildly entertained by it.
Yeah, I suppose that makes sense. So in those moments where everybody thinks the minute or the second matters, it's actually just a compilation of your historical actions.
Yeah, well, and we've watched so many movies too where, the guy gets beat down and he's bleeding or whatever, and his inner monologue, or Rocky's inner monologue, or the coach says something, and it's like, sometimes that happens, but for the most part, it's you're in the moment and you are trying to make the best decision you can with the information you have, the split second information that you have right there in the moment. Sometimes you zig when you should have zagged, and sometimes you lose, and sometimes you make bad decisions, and sometimes you go back and watch tape and think, what the heck was I thinking? Can't believe I did that. Can't believe I made this decision inside of the confines of competition, but it's all a learning process. And I am where I am today because of my wins and because of my losses, because of my shortcomings and because of my triumphs, and because of, the tears that I've cried and the hard work that I've put in and the pain that I've put myself through, the times I've bled. And ultimately you're able to find something inside of you. So that's why I think it's a bastardization of the blessings that you have to not be pushing yourself every single day. And it sounds a little off-putting to people, like, well, this guy's a little bit intense. It's a little bit crazy. But I mean, I'm here to tell you today that I just have pushed so hard and tried to find the outskirts of my comfort zone in every single aspect of my life to get me to that moment where the lights are shining brightest at your greatest moment of opportunity or at your darkest hour, for you to inherently, spiritually, deeper than just the cognitive thinking of, am I enough? And I want to be able to answer that question with, yes, I am.
What's interesting is you talk about these things that I think a lot of people think sound good. Like, I'm a family man, I'm a family first person. But I remember when we were first texting back and forth, I was like, what do we want to talk about? What businesses do we want to talk about? What products are you really focused on? And we talked about your businesses. We talked about Cram, and we talked about Walk On Fitness, and we talked about, some of your goals for your business. But the line that I won't forget that you texted me was, so here are some of my businesses and hobbies, but my real passion projects are my wife and kids. I engage with a lot of business people, and that's rarely a sentence said up front. Where do you think that family-oriented nature came from? As it seems really important to you. And also, this thing we're at right now, what astounds me is, of like the 5 guys I know the best who have the biggest platforms here, like all 5 of them are super family guys before almost anything else.
I'm 6 years into being a father now, to almost 10 years into being a husband. Some of these guys here, actually almost all of these guys here that you're kind of alluding to, have been in that quest longer, and honestly probably made a lot more money with a lot more businesses and all these other things. And I'm sure they would tell you, we always want to seek the material. We always want to seek whatever it is, the respect and the awe of driving a cool car, or having a nice big house, or having all these zeros in your bank account. And, guys here that would tell you, hey, all that stuff really is cool, but it took me 15 years to learn, or this experience to learn, that what is most important is who you're doing life with and who you're serving. Because ultimately, it's those things that are going to last forever. And that's what I've said about, winning belts and making a lot of money and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff really is awesome, and it's a means to an end to provide for the family. But nobody's going to give a crap about that stuff a decade from now. My sons aren't going to care about the world titles that I might win or the different accomplishments that I've had. And all they're going to care about is, did you show up and do what you said you were going to do? And did you show up when I needed you? Did you serve me mentally, spiritually, emotionally throughout this process that we call life, And I really did have a phenomenal upbringing. My mom and dad supported me, loved me, took care of me. We felt safe in our home. And for me now, to where I'm at and the success that I have had, it's just, I look at what they did, how hard they tried. And if they tried that hard, and now I have a life that's probably easier than theirs. I work less than they do. I make more money for less time than they had to put in. I have this huge platform that's just such a huge blessing. It just seems like the only right thing to do is have your priorities straight. And for me, my priority always has been, well, okay, I might have this business venture, or I might have this fight that entails this fight camp, or this, all of the different things that have going on, but how does it affect my family? What lens can I look through it and see it coinciding with the Venn diagram of my family, my reputation, and who I want to be on the other side of it? Because ultimately, the lights are going to fade, and the interviewers are going to stop calling, and all of this stuff is going to be over, and I'm just going to be a retired MMA fighter. And all that's going to matter is the reputation that I have with those amongst the world who are able to watch me fight. And then the most important reputation is, who am I as a father and who am I as a husband? And it's just, both of my sons just deserve that. And my wife deserves that. And she's the most supportive, amazing woman that I could have ever asked for. So it's pretty darn easy to make them a priority.
Take notes, dudes. Yeah. I think, my friend Alex said it really perfectly. He was like, the Queen of England, like arguably one of the most famous people on the planet, had the longest reign in history. You guys watched her funeral and everything, and she died. And how many times have you thought about her today? Not 3 or 4 or 6 months later, not once. And so you have a queen of an entire kingdom, and she is irrelevant 6 months after she died. And it sounds a little harsh, except I think it's true. At the end of the day, nobody will remember you, and most of your life will mean nothing except to a very few amount of people. So I think that's really powerful. Now, that said, you have some violence in you, obviously, right? Like, you can't do what you do without some point of violence. And I guess I think about that because my husband's Special Forces, and he came from a different background than you. A lot more trauma in his background, maybe, at least as far as he would say, and difficulty and strife. But he always talks about how his parents f***ed him up just enough to be a team guy and not enough to be a stripper, you know? Yeah, and he was like, yeah, thank God for that, you know?
Just enough.
Just enough. But like, that violence for you, where does it come from? And how do you tap into it when you can't gratitude Conor McGregor to the ground? So what happens?
Yeah, I mean, you can't gratitude him to the ground. You can't joy him to the ground. You can't serve other people to put him to the ground. But I think ultimately, for me, the sport of wrestling was the same way. I mean, I wanted to bury people. I wanted to hurt them. I wanted to make them quit. I wanted to make them cry. But it's inside the confines of competition. I don't think about that at all in my everyday life. I mean, if anything, I'm probably the biggest pacifist you might ever meet. I am afraid of confrontation. I don't like confrontation. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't, people think, well, shoot, you must have had a bunch of free street fights. That's why you got into mixed martial arts. I never got into a street fight. Number one, I never really got into those scenarios. And number two, I was too afraid to get in trouble. So I think, for me, it's just another competition. It just so happens that people get hurt and stitches get put in and blood gets drawn and people get knocked out and choked out. It looks like such a violent sport. And if you're ever around mixed martial arts or you really dive into it, the people in mixed martial arts, of course, there's some violent ones, some people who really enjoy the violence. I wouldn't say that I enjoy the violence whatsoever. Now, if you watch when that cage door closes, it looks like I'm really enjoying the violence. And I've never once thought, well, I don't really enjoy this violence thing. I'm focused on the task at hand. That last bell sounds, or that guy gets knocked out, or the fight is over, whatever. Then it turns back into, okay, now we'll just go back to being normal again, And I think, if I could really just think about me and who I am, and because I did a lot of this work with my mindset coach, Jim Hensel, and it was like, who am I? And I think God has given me a really awesome gift that I'm extremely grateful for, to be able to live on both ends of the spectrum in a big, big way. Like extreme joy and peace and contentment and service and love. And then the most savage individual that just wants to dominate people inside of a cage. And somewhere in between, I'm always usually living on this side of the spectrum. And then all of a sudden that cage door closes and I've been given a gift to be able to go cross that line to be that guy. And some guys can't in this sport. Some guys live too close over here in the violence, and it shows for better or worse in their fights or in their craft, in their business, in their life. That's why self-image and self-concept and mental health is so important in this world. And I've just done a lot of work, I think, on myself to make sure I show up as the man that I want to show up as in life, in these kind of interactions and with my friends and my family and my colleagues. And then I show up as a completely different person whenever that cage door closes. And it's just, I think it truly is a gift. I think it's something that I didn't choose to. I've never once in my life tried to will myself or visualize myself into a savagely violent person inside of the cage. It just happens. And I think the greatest compliment I ever get is whenever I, meet somebody and hang out with them, and they're like, you really are a really nice, cool guy. You're pretty normal. And I'm like, thank you. It's actually because you can watch my highlights and you can see the way that I fight. And rightfully so, I would think the exact same thing about me.
There's a couple sayings. Like one, I can think, if you think that strong men are scary, wait until you meet weak men. And I think that image of, do you want to be the warrior in the garden or the gardener at war is really important for this time and date that we sit in. And so if you have the capacity for violence, but not the need for violence, that's actually really important to humanity overall. I mean, we know this from the theory of disarmament and what happens at a certain level. some people need to have arms in order for others to not push forward. So I do think there's a huge place for violence in society that we don't like to talk about. And I think there's also a place in outlets for it, like MMA. Yeah. Most of the people I've met who do MMA, a lot of them you wouldn't know, and most of them are incredibly soft, like the people here that are teaching self-defense. And yet, in an action, I'd much rather be in this room than many others.
If you needed to, yeah. And it also goes back to, as you talked about, being a gardener in a war compared to being a warrior in a garden. One of my favorite books of all time, John Eldridge, Wild at Heart, talks about how a man's soul and heart was designed, and every man was created for a battle to fight, an adventure to have, and a beauty to win. And in this day and age, in this society, there's less and less people who are seeking adventures to have and battles to fight. And I'm not saying battles to fight like getting in a street fight, but as you talk, like being in here, these men and women are having battles to fight in here, and they're learning things, mixed martial arts, jiu-jitsu, all of these different things. Just pushing yourself so that you don't feel the need to push yourself in the wrong direction in other areas, And we've got things backwards in a lot of ways, and it's very important. And I do, even in here, we're doing gun disarmament, and we're saying, hey, okay, what do you do if a person sticks a gun in your face? My wife is here, my son is here, I'm walking down the street, downtown Nashville, whatever. And, the confidence that I have, if that happened, it's something, and I'm not just saying this to boast about myself. I don't know the techniques, but it's just that scenario where I think there's no way that I would not be able to protect my family in this scenario. And I can't imagine what so many, especially men, might think. And with that comes lack of self-image, which then leads to so many different things. And so you just have to be proficient in so many more things than we think we need to today.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I was scrolling through your comments on some of your Instagram posts.
Don't do that.
This is a terrible idea. Jesus, nobody do that. Like, you should go follow Mike Chandler MMA on Instagram. But I was scrolling through your comments, and whoa, speaking of weak man trying to sound strong, I saw that all over yours, really violent commentary. And I get a few things, but mostly my husband and I chuckle at them.
Yeah.
But some of yours were really, really intense. I remember being at the McGregor-Poirier fight and hearing people yell and scream when one person gets hurt, and feeling what that energy feels like. I've never felt anything like that before. And so you have such vitriol directed at you. How do you handle haters? How do you handle people that say bad things about you? Is there something that you go to when that happens?
Admittedly, I do read more than I probably should. I probably should just post and not worry about what they say. But I think for me, it could be 20 negative bad things, but then there's one that's just like one of those ones where you get it, I'm sure, as well. Whether they're talking about me helping them with their self-image, me helping them with confidence, me helping them get in the gym, or the way that my fitness app has helped them and gained the confidence or lost fat, gained muscle, all of these different things. So I want to be in tune with the people that are in tune with me. And I am convinced that a lot of those negative comments sometimes too come from bot farms across the world. Social media is a weird place. But also I do, I'm not naive to think that there's definitely some real people behind those comments. And it's ultimately you just got to keep doing what feels right to you. And the people are going to comment with the way that they comment. And there's been those haters, and there hasn't been social media for hundreds of years, but for hundreds of years, thousands of years, there has been people that are not going to believe in you. They're going to trash you at every single turn. They're going to say things about you that aren't true. And ultimately, it's the highest nail that gets hammered, always. So if you can continue to climb and climb and climb, and so many people are so worried about trying to grab at your heels and pull you down from the rung that you're on, instead of just reaching up and trying to climb to the next rung themselves. Ultimately, it comes with the territory. And, just probably similar to you or any of the other people that we kind of rub elbows with, we take a silent smile every single time we see one of those, because you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing when you have that many people saying things about you. And mine is just, I like to talk candidly, but also not sound like a narcissist. But ultimately, I think being a mixed martial arts fighter, a UFC fighter, I'm similar to like your husband, special forces. I mean, there's only so many areas for the male gender where we're like, that guy, like that's the guy, right? Maybe I don't want to be just like him, but I want that aspect of it or that, you know? So I think fighting in a cage and being on the big platform and doing what I do, looking the way I look, working out as hard as I do, I think there's a lot of aspects of desirable traits that most men would want, but instead of making that life for them themselves, they would rather say something about it and accuse me of steroids or accuse me of this or accuse me of whatever. And it's just, it's part of it.
You ever let it slip and like accidentally feed the troll a little bit? Or are you pretty good at that?
Well, every now and then, yeah, I do. Well, normally, you know what I actually do?
What's your best one? Have you ever had one where you're like, that was a great comeback?
No, I actually never to trolls, but I have had a few good comebacks like to other fighters who have said things. Because I also came into the UFC and nobody gave me any credit, and rightfully so. I was outside of the UFC forever, you know, world champion outside the UFC, which isn't really world champion. You're not the number one guy in the world. It is world champion, but it's not. You're not the number one guy in the world. So I didn't get a lot of respect from my fellow fighters. So I threw a couple of zingers here and there, but for the most part, I'm more of a direct message kind of guy. I don't want to give you the satisfaction of responding to you on that public thread to let everyone else know that I'm even responding to you. So I'll just respond to you in a direct message, which they could screenshot it and show people anyway. And it's not mean. It's not, you know, might be a little snarky, a little condescending, a little bit, you know. Mike Tyson said social media made y'all way too comfortable with talking and not getting punched in the mouth type of,
100%.
you know, and would I ever punch someone in the mouth for something they said? Absolutely not. But every now and then you're like, no, I'm not letting this one slip. The worst is when people completely make stuff up. Like I had a guy make something up. I was like, well, I work with somebody who went to high school with him and he was doing steroids in high school and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, that was a direct message worthy type of comment. And it's like, okay, why don't you go ahead and tell me who that is? It always turns into one more snarky comment, then I go back and they say, okay, actually, it's not true, actually, man. And I'm a big fan. Like, I'm really sorry. The amount of times that it goes complete 180 and they end up being like, well, man, I'm a really big fan, man. Just keep doing what you're doing. I'm like, no response, block, whatever. You know, yeah. It's just, it's
haters
the world we live in.
the biggest flags, I think. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something in psychology, actually, they talk about that, where one, we have a negative bias as humans, otherwise we're dead, right? And then two, because we have that negative bias, we've realized, oh man, if we talk negative to somebody else, we get 10x the attention that we do from a positive comment. And so I can see where society conditions us to have that reaction.
It's really, really unfortunate.
Yeah. But I think as a fighter, it's fascinating because you really can't punch somebody in the face.
Yeah,
I can, but like not much might be good to go down. Maybe after I use your app, then I'm gonna be on it.
Well, it's good though too when other people stick up for you, or they'll say something like, "You do realize how badly this guy would beat you up in one punch," and everyone else does the commenting and they go after the trolls, and it's even better. It makes me smile even more than me having to do it. You know, so it's kind of cool.
Well, it's true. So you were on Bellator for a long time.
Yeah, it was like a decade. Yeah.
And top guy there for a long time. Lots of people say you should have been in UFC sooner. Lots of people wonder kind of why that didn't happen, why you didn't get the look from Dana White or whoever. So what's your take on that? Why did that take so long? And then what'd you have to do to finally overcome it?
And it's fine. The way you frame the question is almost like, well, I wasn't good enough to go there, or the UFC wouldn't have taken me earlier. And I think that's what a lot of people thought. I honestly was making the best business decision that I could for a very long time. The business of mixed martial arts it's a beautiful, beautiful thing for certain people, and it's a tough, tragic thing for a lot of people. I was making a great living outside of the UFC and also saw myself continuing to build my platform outside of the UFC. So therefore, when I did come over, it was going to be a better business decision, right? And ultimately too, there was a lot of factors involved. It never felt like the right time to finish my contract, test free agency, and then field offers from other organizations until I think it was 2020. I had my last fight in Bellator in August of 2020. Knocked out a former UFC champion, Benson Henderson. It was a tough fight for me because he's a tough guy to put away. He's extremely durable, and he's a tough guy to look good against. You can beat somebody, but you have these fights where you're like, it wasn't that beautiful, graceful, dominant, because he's just good everywhere. So it was a scary time, but I made the decision to bet on myself. And then it's just crazy how, and I talk about this often, is so many doors in life stay closed and stay locked until it's the exact right, perfect time. And that door stayed locked or felt like it should have been locked for such a long time. Then it was time to be opened, and I just kicked the door down. We had Khabib was the #1 guy in the world. He retires. Conor and Poirier were tied up in their trilogy that they were about to have, the fight you're alluding to. So that gave me the title shot after my UFC debut win. And it all worked out perfectly for me. So people say, man, you should have been in the UFC much sooner, because I hear that a lot. And I think I came over at the exact right time. Or maybe that's just me accepting my current circumstances and not having to look back and say, well, I woulda, shoulda, coulda. But it worked out perfectly.
Definitely healthier. That's interesting. So I don't know anything about UFC negotiations and how the business of UFC, or even if we don't say UFC, fighting works. Like, how does that work? Obviously, people are making hundreds of millions of dollars off of fighters. When you go into a fight, and you can speak in generalities, obviously, like deciding to go against McGregor, what turns on in your business brain? What do you have to negotiate, and who gets what? Like, you have an agent that gets something, then you have then obviously the UFC takes something, then you got to negotiate against McGregor. How does that work?
Yeah, so we're all under contract. So per
fight? Or do you have a standing salary with UFC?
No salary. You only get paid if you fight, you know? And it's usually, you could sign a 4-fight deal, you could sign a 6-fight deal, an 8-fight deal, and it'll be, say, 2 years or 6 fights, whatever happens sooner. If you got your 6 fights in 1 year, your contract's over. Or if you had 3 fights in a 2-year period, your contract is over. So it either goes by term, which is the time, or the amount of fights. You negotiate those terms, your manager or your agent, manager, or attorney. For me, I've had one manager my entire life who was also a criminal defense attorney who has negotiated thousands of contracts at this point, and a lot of NFL, NBA, and UFC contracts now. We've done the best that we could to protect me, also leave enough meat on the bone for the current promotion to always make them feel like they're sometimes getting a deal, if you will. I think you hear a lot of people who would never ever say that. They want to get as much as they possibly can, and they're going to dig their heels in, and it usually doesn't work out, because one thing that you have to realize, this is not just mixed martial arts. This is you. This is everybody in this room. This is everybody in every endeavor, every single scenario, besides a very, very, very tiny fraction of the entire populace. We're all replaceable. Every single person is replaceable. If you shut your phone off and you stop making content, there's going to be someone else who's just going to be just as big as you. That can well up something inside of you. We're like, wait a second. But if you can set aside
my TikToks are important.
Well, yeah.
Who would be able to survive without that?
Well, it's true, but it's one of those scenarios where in mixed martial arts especially, we think that the show won't go on without us, and it will. I promise you that. We've got mega superstars that retire, or Conor being out for 2 full years, John Jones being out for 2.5, 3 years. They can build new stars, and 1 year from now, there's going to be a guy that they're making money off of, just like they were making money off of these other guys. And having that approach, I've always had that approach. I had that approach in Bellator. I had that approach now with the UFC. We're all replaceable. The show will go on. And I think there's a certain level of freedom that comes with that. It sounds like you're giving away your freedom, saying, well, they're in control more than you're in control. But ultimately, there's so much more freedom that comes with that, because you can just operate, in my opinion, doing the best that you possibly can, and realizing that this whole show is going to end eventually for you. Nothing lasts forever. And yeah, you negotiate these contracts, and then when your contracts are up for negotiation, you get a new one, or
not.
There's time, or not, or you're 3 fights into a contract. They say, hey, you have grossly overperformed on this contract. We're ripping it up. Call us money. We're ripping this up. We're doing a new deal.
Interesting.
That happened with the UFC. I was 4 fights in, and they said, hey, we're doing a new deal. You deserve more. I'm like, okay. Now, had I been like, hey, I deserve more, guess how many more fights I would have had on that contract? I would have had to have those 2. We never would have went back to the negotiation table.
Interesting.
So if you take care of those who sign your paycheck, be a good employee, show up on time, do more than what is asked of you, it usually works out.
So if I was to do a pie chart like this of like how a fight works, it's like, I don't know, I have an agent, and like our agent manager fee is like 20%, right? And then you have your promotion fee or distribution. And I'd think of that in my business and say like my distribution costs me, so all my marketing people, is probably like another 30%. So that's 50% of what I make right there. Then on top of that, because our net margins at the end are more like 40%, we get to maybe keep 40 cents of every dollar that we make. On top of that, I have like administration, and I have like legal and all that the back end. So like in my world, maybe I keep 40 cents of every dollar that I make. Not exactly for you, but theoretically in fighting, what does that look like? Like who do you have to pay and how does that business shake out? Because there are people like Jake Paul, right, that are like, oh, I'm going to create this whole thing and I want to own the whole pie chart theoretically.
Yep.
And instead of me keeping 40%, I'm keeping 60 and they get 40.
Yeah. So, I mean, we pretty much as mixed martial artists, we're worried about two things, your fight contract and your fights, and then endorsement deals, sponsorship deals, relationships with company. You know, sometimes that starts out as free, you know, like everybody, it starts out as free product. Then maybe it starts out, then you get a little bit of cash and then a little bit of product. And then you get more and more cash and more product and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you end up with equity in companies, whether you made an investment financially or you're made an investment financially and sweat equity. Yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, I just pay my management, if you will. They take their percentage.
Is there a company around you besides your manager? Or is everything you do?
My management they're an agency at this point. You know, when we started out, it was like a skeleton crew of just two guys, basically. Now they got, 4 or 5 people working underneath them. Someone handling travel and medical, someone handling going out and bird dog and finding deals. And so they've continued to grow, which is, good for all of us because there's a bigger pool to be able to find opportunities in. So I just pay that percentage and then
do you have like a PR
taxes.
person?
I don't. I probably should at this point.
And no social media person either. That's you too?
I don't. Well, I have a full-time media director. So he shoots all of my content, edits all of my content. We do our podcast episodes.
Posts it.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't. I do all the posting. We are in a transition right now where I've realized, hey, it's time to go a little bit harder throughout this year, especially leading up to this big fight. Probably going to have him take over some of it and then him post probably 50% of my content and me post the other 50 because I never wanted to relinquish all of that control because I always wanted every word that was sent out to people going to be me. It was going to be me and it was going to be authentically me. And truthfully, what I've realized now is it still will be mine. It just won't be me writing it right now and then posting it. It will be us actually scheduling it and then me writing it today and it not post for a month, but it was my words,
of course, yeah, batch content.
Yeah, or if it's a clip of a podcast or whatever, pulling out that clip and then me expanding on that, if you will, and then making sure it's just all my words that are going out to my people who, I think they trust me at this point. I think I've created a trustworthy following with a reputation of people who are
totally,
who say, hey, I like what that guy stands for, so I want to make sure I stay true to that.
One of your big things is if you want to influence many, you have to cast a wide net, which is why you have this podcast that is not just about fighting. It's about wisdom and philosophy and theory and ideology. And it's actually quite profound, having listened to quite a few episodes. And so I think the other way to think about it too is just like, how big can you get if you're in between fights, sending out tweets, it's hard.
Yeah.
But if you can allow other people to become the shepherds of your message, then actually you can have quite a flock because there's not just one of you out there tending it.
Coming from that too, I always wanted to break the mold of what people thought a fighter was. I mean, you think fighter, okay, you're like, okay, he looks like this and he acts like this and he lives his life a certain way. Yeah, exactly. Lives his life a certain way. And it's like, I've always wanted to break the mold. I always wanted that interaction of, holy cow, like you're like a normal guy. It's not exactly what I thought a fighter was. And it's like, well, not all of us are like that, but that's how I am. And maybe I fight in a cage for a living, but it's not the most important thing about me. So that's why my podcast is called Walk On Wisdom. It's not, MMA wisdom or, and we talk about mixed martial arts here and there. We'll take only MMA questions from our viewers, and then we'll make them into MMA episodes. But so far we've only done maybe 1 or 2 actual MMA episodes. And a lot of them are just, hey, I'm going through this right now, or hey, I'm struggling with this, or hey, this, my girlfriend broke up with me, or whatever it might be. I'm going through this transition. And then I just sit there and I always start the podcast with, hey, I am by no means an expert in anything, but I've been around the world a couple times and experienced a lot of great things. And here's what I have to say about it.
I love that. Let's talk business again for a second. So a lot of people have built giant empires with audiences like yours. I mean, not to use McGregor, but you do have this fight coming up with him. But he's sold his tiny little whiskey company for $500 million, right? We've had The Rock, not quite a fighter in the exact sense, but, sell his or not sell his, grow his to be worth, I think, close to now $1 billion, right? What do you see for you? Do you want a business empire? And if so,
what would it be of?
Right now, focusing on this fight, building my platform, and then continuing to rub elbows with, like the guys we have here and doing business with them, doing good business with good people, whether it be real estate, whether it be in actual businesses like Cram, having my fitness app. Because ultimately, for me, it's always about the people behind the product, if you will, valuing the people over profit, valuing my voice going out to people and making them feel something. What I want most when I'm fighting is to make people feel something, make them feel something about their life, make them feel something about what they're going through, make them feel something about what they can accomplish. If a small guy from a small town who was taught to do small things, little old me can do it and somehow end up on that big stage, well, so can you. And I want them to feel that. So making investments in real estate, into companies, building my platform. I'd like to speak on stages and do big events and really get that one-on-one connection like we have here at Operation Blackside. I mean, the people that we have here, then they're all successful in their own right, They all have businesses, or they're entrepreneurs, or they're all doing awesome things. But to get this opportunity to hang out with them, we just got done with lunch and sitting there at a picnic table talking to a couple business owners. Andy's from Madison, Alabama. Joe is from Cincinnati, or where, you're just getting to meet all these people. I think there could be a product or two in there. I think Cram is going to crush it. I'm excited.
Well, let's talk about that one a little bit, because that's a pretty cool product. So I looked it up. It's Cram PB&J replacements, sort of like, what is that other one? It's like Uncrustables or something.
Yeah, Uncrustables been around forever.
Lots of processed stuff in there, basically sugar and additives, as opposed to this really clean product. So you are one of the backers of it. Why did you choose like a PB&J, and why that company?
Well, ultimately, it goes back to the people.
Yeah, those two.
Austin and Ruth. It's a mother and a son who started it out of Colfax, California, kind of Northern California. It took me a couple conversations to realize, okay, these I believe in these people. And then also you try the product. It's absolutely delicious. For its nutrition profile and how nutritionally sound it is and nutritionally dense it is, how healthy it is for you, the fact that it also tastes good was enough for me, because obviously, like you said, Uncrustable, it's been around forever, owned by Smuckers, tons of added sugar, bleached white flour bread, and all of these different things, seed oil after seed oil after seed oil. We have no seed oils. The preservatives were actually, it's a natural preservative. We're nationwide in Sprouts. There's no sugar added, 19 grams of protein in our B, 16 grams of protein in our OG. And we're working on some research and development right now for whether it be an almond, kind of an almond butter, because some people are allergic to peanuts, or, tree nuts. And there's all these different things. And they're forward thinking like that. They want to have numerous products on the market by the end of this year and then next year. So
is it profitable yet?
Profitable. Yeah. We are nationwide in Sprouts, and we've had conversations with, I won't say who we've had conversations with, because I don't know if they're going to happen, but we got some really good options as far as nationwide, big time grocers, because obviously we started online. That's how every business pretty much starts. And so you kind of get those sales to be able to get nationwide in Sprouts. So, but ultimately it's the people behind it, and they're awesome. And we just continue to keep on connecting the dots between all kinds of different people. And I think Cram's going to do very well.
So I've found that being married and having a lot going on, having a big platform, being relatively successful maybe, or just being married in general can be really hard. And so, my husband and I do this thing called team every day. I would say we do it 60% of the time, where in the evening we get together and we have this small little sort of framework that we take each other through, so that we're touching base on some of the stuff that's bothering us through the day, maybe with each other or in life in general. Also just things that we appreciate about one another. And it's become a ritual for us that's helpful. For you and your wife, is there anything that you do habitually, or a framework that you use to stay sane amidst the chaos?
Habitually, not all the time, but we have tried to be intentional about, similar to what you said, actually sitting down and going through our schedule, because we don't like surprises. Nobody likes surprises in general. I mean, some people can live like that, but whenever you live a life like ours, where she's got a full-time job, she's a career woman, we got our 2 children, we got me and all the craziness that I'm doing as well. Life can also sometimes happen so fast that you realize, holy cow, I didn't realize what was coming up. We didn't realize we had that. And then all of a sudden what you thought was going to be kind of a down week to be able to kind of hang out and get back to neutral turns into a very chaotic week. So us actually planning things out, and this was a huge step for me. It was kind of a beautiful opposite ends of the spectrum. My wife was so she was in kind of medicine, where it's just like very binary, very black and white. Everything was kind of planned out. You know, you go to school and then you get your degree and then you go and you get your job and then you work your hours and you that's medicine, right? Whereas mine is, I don't know if I'm going to make $0 for the next 3 months or I can make $1 million in the next month. I don't know. You know, I might fight next week. I might fight a year from now, you know? So she came from this, hey, I like to have everything planned out. And I came from like I can't plan anything out because I don't know what the heck is going to happen. So she's become more towards the center and I've gotten better at planning things as well. So for us, actually making sure that we have things on the calendar, me being more proactive where I wasn't thinking as much about how it affected the entire family or us or her career. And her career is extremely hectic right now as well. Going off of that, obviously that's more kind of habitual or tactical, but then an overarching theme for us is me making sure that even when I've had the success that I've had and she hasn't needed to work in years, she wants to work and she enjoys work and she gets value out of work. She gets purpose out of work. She has arguably works more now than she did when we first got together, and she needs to work. She doesn't need to work even half as much as she needed to back in the day when we first got together, but she probably works more now and makes more now and provides more now than she ever has. And I've always gave her that ability to do so. And she needed that. A lot of guys did not understand her. They didn't understand that she was married to medicine. They didn't understand that, oh, well, if she doesn't text back in an hour or 2 hours or call back is because she was doing a sterile procedure in the emergency room. And it became this personal thing. And for me, thank God she came into my life at the right time where I was very secure in myself and I was in love with mixed martial arts and she was in love with medicine and our roads converged together. So me just making sure I always give her the leeway to be her own person, pursue her own thing. She never wanted to be a mixed martial artist wife or a professional athlete's wife. She never wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's some of the hardest work that you can ever do. But ultimately, she knows what she wants to do, and I've always given her the leeway, the permission to do those things. And in turn, I get permission to do all the crazy things that I'm doing and pursue the crazy things that I'm doing. And so I think that love and that mutual respect pays so many dividends day after day, season after season, in the tough times, in the easy times, and every time in between, because we truly are so equally yoked when it comes to that.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I think the world right now is having this weird mix-up about genders and femininity and masculinity and in so many different ways that I try to largely not pay attention to. But one thing that I've found is, because I've been a career person for a long time, is that it does seem today like you need a man, if you're going to have a career and you're going to be kind of a woman who's going to be relatively forceful or in her masculine a lot, however the hippies like to say it in Austin, then you basically do need this man that's really confident in that. And, you know, my husband being in his background, he could care less. He's like the least motivated by money human I've ever met in my life. He just does not let what society says should define him ever. He will walk around in mandals and jorts and a Hawaiian button down, and he will be the baddest dude in the room and will show it to nobody. He could give a fuck. And I think it's really rare, but it's really powerful for people to hear men like you say that, because there's this one side, which is like, we were coming to this event and one of our team members' friends, we were looking at Operation Black Site. And I was like, tell us ideas, questions, what should we do to film here? And they didn't know me, obviously, and they didn't know who I was married to, but they were like, why are you going to an event that is focused on toxic masculinity? And why would you support that? And I like chuckled on the inside because I'm like, if this is toxic masculinity, like we're in trouble. This is just humans being hard to kill, which really actually has nothing to do with whether they have a penis or a vagina. It just tends to be a good idea generally. But I wonder what your thoughts are on, one, this idea of if you're tough and you're hard, you're a toxic dude. Have people said that to you? And do you have feelings on that one way or the other?
I've been, called that or accused of that or saying that I'm perpetuating that narrative. But Toxic masculinity is, it's a real thing. There's masculinity, or there are men they're toxic, but it isn't because of the way that God created a man. It's because of the societal pressures, the box that we put ourselves in, the literal chain and collars that we put around our neck, and we're being held back, or we're being pushed into the corner, or we're being told that we can't do this, or being told that we should do that. And we're being pulled in so many different ways. And what it means, the definition of what it means to be a man has continued. It's never changed philosophically. It never should have changed, but societally, it has continued to change. And even going back to my wife, the harder I work, the more purpose-driven I am, the more a little bit kind of off my rocker, blinders on, going towards my purpose, what I need to go to perform, to be who I need to be, ultimately makes me the best husband I can possibly be, the best lover I can possibly be, the softer I can possibly be, because you lose that softness when you don't have that hard. You really do. And then it just becomes this facade of being a tough guy, right? The facade of being equipped, the facade of being a real man. No person or no man who engages in those kinds of activities or actions that could be deemed toxic masculinity in its truest form is an actual real man. They are a small child with deep, deep wounds, and they never truly grew up. They never truly grew into the man that God created them to be. And a lot of times it's not their fault. It could be their parents. It could be the things that have happened to them in the past, the seasons that they have gone through that has just turned them into who they are in a negative way. But I think ultimately being able to protect yourself, protect your family, stand up for your family, provide for your family, having a battle to fight, an adventure to have, and a beauty to win is what makes a man a man. And that is the healthiest way and the healthiest thing on the planet. And it is interesting. I mean, yeah, I fight in a cage for a living. I try to knock people out. I try to choke them out. I fight them. I try to make them bleed. Ultimately, if I am impacting people, reaching people, making people feel something, inspiring and motivating people through the way that I'm living my life and through my performances, it's ultimately me pursuing my passion and fulfilling my purpose, which then in turn makes it vastly more hard for me to actually be toxically masculine, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've never liked the term much. I think it's so misleading. I think there's just toxic. There are women who are toxic feminists.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
men
exactly.
Who are toxic,
if there's toxic masculinity, then there's definitely toxic femininity.
100%.
And truthfully, if there was a definition, I would say, okay, there's definitely a small subsect of people who fit that mold, if you will.
Yeah, I think if like AOC and Andrew Tate had a baby, we would just have the two of those like all together, you know?
Right?
Just both sides. The problem is, again, in this world of social media, the extremes get all the views, right? Yeah. I mean, we see it all the time. It's so fascinating on YouTube and everywhere else. But if I say something like toxic masculinity, or if I say something like communism, on either side of the thing, you're going to get all these views and all these whatever. And I think one thing you've done really well is you've kind of stayed out of the noise.
Yeah, sometimes I was just having a conversation in the taco line here, and I know what I stand for. I probably should stand up more. I should probably be more vocal. I think the best thing that we can do too, even going back to us making sure we don't get put in a box too, is, we could have that conversation. I probably could be more vocal about what I truly believe. And I think it's going to offend some people, and it's also going to get people to say, heck yeah. But ultimately, just operating in a sense that you truly feel like you are saying what you want to say when you want to say it, or as much as you want to say it, doing what you want to do as much as you want to do it, and not having anybody tell you that you need to, or that you should do more or should do less. And for me, I've always just kind of operated that way, where I want to do what I want to do and act the way I want to act and say what I want to say. And there'll be times where I say, well, I can't believe I said that, or I can't believe I did that. Well, that's going to get some unfollows. That's going to get some hate. That's going to be a headline, but it's all part of it.
Yeah, you're all over YouTube right now. We were searching your name, and it's like videos everywhere. We need to find a way to get you monetized on other people's stuff that they talk about. Yeah, we have a saying at Contrarian Thinking, which is civilize the mind, make savage the body, build the bank account. We kind of believe that you need to have financial freedom typically before you can have physical freedom, aka like work where you want, when you want, on what you want. And then finally, you could have philosophical freedom of your mind. And in a society in which most people today 1 out of 5 people will die broke, which is wild in a world where we have all this. I think one of your missions is, and where I kind of want to wrap, is on that make savage the body. Like, you have Walk On Fitness. You obviously are in great shape. You've got about 37 abs.
36.
Okay, right around there. And so fitness is big for you. But obviously America needs it. We're more obese than ever. We have more chronic disease than we ever have. And we have more mental health issues than we've ever had. So why Walk On Fitness? And if you could say in like 3 words, like, what do you think, if you were just a normal human who didn't get paid to have like 36 abs, what would you be telling them they need to do today?
You've got to start somewhere, and I think and truthfully, obviously I've been in, organized athletics since I was 13 years old, and I've now been a professional athlete for 14 years. So I get paid to be fit, I get paid to work out essentially, right? And fitness is so intimidating to so many people. And they say, well, I'm overweight now, or I got bad knees, or, well, my mom and dad were overweight and their mom and dad were overweight. And this family tree is just a bunch of overweight people, and we tell these stories, and we think I'm not going to be able to see the results that I want to see, so therefore I'm not going to start. I think if we wait to start whenever the conditions are perfect, or we have a perfect plan, or there's any kind of uncertainty whatsoever, if we wait until you have the perfect plan or it's going to be certain, you're just never, ever going to start. It's just part of it. So that's why I created Walk On Fitness. The hardest part for me is the fact that I did create one that is for higher level fitness, higher level athletes. Yeah. But our leg program, anybody can do it. Our upper body program, anybody can do it. My guided on camera, body weight only circuits, anybody can do those. Any fitness levels. It doesn't matter if you do all the reps or you do 100 pounds lighter than I'm doing. That's the biggest thing. Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's the biggest thing is here's the workout, here's the plan. It's proven to work. I've been doing it over the last 22 years as a professional athlete, essentially since wrestling. These are the exercises that I've done to create this body. And the hardest part about fitness too is everyone wants that secret. What is the secret? What's the silver bullet? And there really isn't, besides consistently being consistent day after day, diligent in the small things. So then and only then can you have the big breakthroughs, the big success, or the body that you want, the fitness that you want, which then in turn turns into mental clarity that you want, which then in turn goes into body confidence, spiritual confidence, the way you carry yourself. So fitness has a way of unlocking doors that almost nothing else can. But like you said, you're going to see aspects of it in every single aspect of your life. If you got your fitness in order, your relationships are going to thrive, your finances are going to thrive, your self-image is going to thrive, every single aspect of your life is going to thrive. So it's very easy for me to talk about it because I've seen it in my own life, and I've seen it in so many other people's lives. So many of the success stories that we've had with Walk On Fitness has been awesome. So,
well, what I like about it too is I was in the gym the other day, and there's these girls in there, and they're trying to get the butt. Every girl wants a butt. So they have these little vibrating things that are connected to their butt. Have you seen this?
No, like electronic things?
Like a little electrodes. Oh, wow. Yeah. And it's hooked up to this thing. And so they're doing movements while they've got the thing hooked up. But then they've got these tiny little legs, and they've got these tiny little arms, and there's like no muscle there. And I think one of the cool things about Walk On Fitness, when I was looking at it, is, you want to be healthy. Yeah. Because it looks nice, when you look good naked. Like, that's rad. But also there's just a longevity thing, which is super linked to athleticism, right? Yeah. And so, sure, you could hook up electrodes, you can do a Brazilian butt lift, you could take this drug that everybody's taking because the Kardashians took it. But at the end of the day, like, you might look good, but you're actually not doing so great.
Yeah,
and so
you're not healthy.
Right.
You're not healthy.
And I think one of the few things people don't realize about MMA is it's just all out athleticism. Yeah. Like, you don't really care about the muscles, though you do have to wear the underwear in the ring. Which, do you get nervous when you walk out in the underwear?
No.
You're not thinking about the underwear.
No, I've been wearing a singlet. You know what a wrestling singlet is? A wrestling, like, it looks, like a leotard look at that. I mean, I've been wearing that since I was 13, 14 years old. So it's like, well.
So if you think you look good in it, you put it on, you're like, check out that.
I used to check myself out a little bit. Be like, okay, butt's looking good. Okay, suck it in a little bit. No, but you would think, though. I mean, you have millions of people watching. You're like, well, hopefully these shorts don't have a wardrobe malfunction, but I've gotten so used to it. It's just like, I'm used to wearing very minimal clothes in front of a lot of people. So
I feel that.
Yeah.
It's like a bikini model before you get your ass kicked.
Exactly.
Before you kick somebody else's ass.
Yes. But like you said too, I mean, that the fitness aspect of it, yeah, I mean, people, and even though we talk about the butt electrodes and whatever, at least they're doing something, you know, that's, you know, I guess I would only say that at least they're doing something. It's not what I would do if you're only like, hey, here's my entire body. I only want this muscle group to be good, hard, big, whatever it is.
Juicy.
Yeah. Whatever the kids are saying, juicy. But, so it's, yeah, I mean, ultimately too, from head to toe, are you being more proficient to be able to go throughout life and not create injuries and be able to provide for your family and be able to not fall down a set of stairs because you can't catch yourself because you're overweight or your muscles don't fire. You know, the amount of people who are walking around, but they're not really walking the way we were created to walk. They're just moving forward, and they slip on one little crack, they fall, and they break a bone, and
can't get up.
Before you know it, you can't provide for your family. You know, especially men. You know, I mean, that's mainly my audience. You know, take care of yourself so then you can really take care of those that you love.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, Jordan Peterson, right? Like, he was pretty overweight, wasn't known anywhere internationally. His daughter got him on a pretty crazy diet, and he started working out. Now the dude doesn't shut up. He's all over the place. Yeah. Big platform, you know? So I do think you're right. Well, this was awesome. You're the man. I'm excited to see you in multiple different ways on The Ultimate Fighter, and then also your fight with McGregor. I think it's just really cool to see a very tough dude show a very soft and theoretical side. So I'm stoked to see you crush some skulls.
Thank you. I will. I'll keep doing it.
Yeah, buddy.
Chandler's the man. Let's get right into the deal of the week. So I became friends with Mike, and we went back and forth on Instagram, and I was looking at his comment section, and holy hell, first of all, do not do that. It's crazy in there, which got me to this quote from his potential competitor. This week they love you, next week they hate you. Just be sure you get paid both weeks. Conor McGregor. Since fighting fans are so brutal, how do fighters make money to counter that? A class action lawsuit against the USC kind of gave us some insight into how fighters make money and what they have to do to get clever with some of the stuff that I call the core satellite model. So making money fighting, yes, but mostly surrounding fighting. So Rachel, you did a bunch of research on how much they make per fight. What did you find out?
So the TLDR is that fighters like Conor McGregor, Anderson Silva, and John Jones earned about $2 million to $7 million per fight from 2011 to 2016.
Which seems like a lot, right?
To me, I mean, I don't watch a lot, but I know after researching that this is nothing.
Yeah, what's crazy is how much smaller of a percentage they earn than the other US sports leagues. So we were looking at the numbers. UFC revenue split versus the other US leagues. NBA all the way to MLB are somewhere between 51 and 45%. UFC is 13 to 14%. Nice job.
To get your face smashed in, you know? Like, oh, man.
I know. So the fighters have to actually get really clever with their core satellite model, basically. And I think McGregor's a really good example of this. So let's talk about how much money McGregor made and break down some of the numbers. Okay, so as far as we can figure out, when McGregor made his UFC debut in like 2013, he basically cashed a welfare check on the way to the airport and won in 67 seconds, which is awesome. So he was paid $16K for his first fight, $8K to show, another $8K if he won, and then a big bonus if he hit a KO or a knockout. So McGregor also gets paid $5 to $10 million annually off of endorsements. But his real money is in like the whiskey company proper, McGregor Fast, the sport agency, the Irish Stout. And that's what ultimately made him, I think, the highest paid athlete ever. So we were looking at the numbers for Proper 12. Basically, the whiskey company offered McGregor a cash-based sponsorship deal in 2016, but McGregor was smart, and his manager, whose name is Audie, I hope I'm not butchering that, decided to partner up with them because he realized the power of a spirits business blasted behind 55 million social media followers with McGregor. So Proper 12 would then go on to sell 200,000 cases in its first 6 months on the market, and they later sold their 51% stake in the business for about $600 million, which I thought was wild. And that's how he's made $650 million. But if you think about the part that's crazy, is he made $50 million from the fighting and $600 million from the other things.
I do want to point out that, like with a lot of athletes, it is really difficult to see how much they're getting paid and how much money that they're making in sponsorships. So I'd be interested to know like a financial breakdown of how much he makes right now.
Yeah. There's a guy I follow on Twitter that I really like, his brother, Anthony Pompliano. His brother, Joe Pompliano, does a ton of these threads.
Yeah, the
on
Pomp
athletes.
brothers. Yeah.
You know those guys.
Yeah.
So anyway, Joe has great breakdowns of this if you want more detail. I think the overarching thing here that's interesting is, no matter what business that you're in, you can always have a bigger solar system than you can have a single planet. And so that's why I always think about the core of what you do. Let's say you're an actor, you get paid to act in movies, but what's the solar system or the satellites that you can launch all around it that can make you more money? And I think Connor's a perfect example of that. Also, Mike's the man, and Mike has launched a healthy PB&J company that I tried that was actually delicious. And then he also now has a tequila company called Hiatus. So I think a lot of these athletes are realizing they can't make all the money in the sport. Plus, you make a ton of money, but how many of these guys go broke because their career is not very long? And once they stop playing, they stop earning. And like you can only take so many hits to the face before you got to retire.
You know, that kind of reminds me of a friend of the podcast, Brian Johnson, productizing himself. Just really interesting how we're starting to see the rise like across industries, not just sports, of people really diving into how can I make money off of my likeness to like the nth degree, because I will not, in Brian's case, I'm sure there's only so much like YouTube videos of his life that he wants to do forever and ever.
I cannot relate.
You're like, keep me on this, baby. But like doing something like creating a product, like I saw he had olive oil, that makes total sense. You know what I mean? Like productizing something, using your likeness, but maybe not having to play the game as one would say, I guess, forever.
Yeah, it goes back to like even the name of this podcast, The Big Deal. It's like we see all the tiny deals running around us, but we miss the big deal. And, I think about that often, about what game are we playing? Do we actually play the right game? And are the deals in front of us the ones that we should take? And I think breaking down examples from athletes and billionaires and big deal makers teaches us how to apply it in our own life, which is really, really cool. I mean, college athletes are going to be able to do this soon because they're actually going to be able to make some money. And they're going to have to be smart about the way that they do it and become independent centers of gravity as opposed to just athletes.
How much does the women's basketball players making in college? That's what I want to know. I feel like I've been seeing a lot of, as somebody that does not watch sports at all, been seeing a lot about women's basketball. That Pomp Brothers giving you guys content ideas.
Well, I'm not sure anybody's really wondering how much the women's basketball players make.
Dude, they're bringing in eyeballs.
Are they?
Yeah, they're bringing in crazy eyeballs.
Why?
Oh my gosh, what's that one girl's name that's a powerhouse? Caitlin Clark.
What's she doing?
She's just killing it in the basketball world. And she's like, I have seen her now. Like Dave Portnoy talked about her on BFF podcast. Like
that's how I know you've made it.
Yeah. But I want to know how much money that girl's making on brand deals. Cannot be a little amount.
That's amazing. Good for her. She should definitely grab that money while she's got it.
Yeah, if she wants to come on the podcast.
Tell us how much you make, Caitlin.
Yeah. Come on. We'll
ask you all the questions that you wish nobody had ever asked you.
We'll make it super uncomfortable. It'll be great.
Okay, I want to get into CEO story time a little bit because there were some studies that totally blew my mind. So let's get into that really quick. So one of my favorite lines from Mike Chandler was this one that he said, which is, I don't take advice from my doubts. And he's a machine, like never misses a workout, runs multiple companies, killer dad, hard. So I wondered why. And it's something I see a lot with MMA guys, mixed martial artist guys. And here's something I thought was fascinating that I think you're going to like the statistic. The statistic blew my mind. And it goes back to doing things that help you increase your self-control as much as humanly possible. Why? There's a study across hundreds of boys who did jujitsu and a control group for those who didn't. The kids who did jujitsu for just 1 to 3 times a week for 45 minutes on average increased their self-control by double digits versus their peers. They stopped being easily distracted, they focused more, they did what needed to be done, or what's called inhibitory control. In a world constantly trying to distract us, apparently you do more BJJ, you can be more disciplined and hard to kill. So interesting. And also, why that matters, I think, is because the more self-control or discipline you have, it turns out the more likely you are to be successful, according to most of the data. So maybe the thing to take away is that we put our kids in BJJ.
I know it shows discipline. I'm just so scared of putting a kid in fighting.
Would you put a kid in football?
No.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I get that.
I do think it shows discipline, though. Like, I see what you're saying.
I think that's normal. I have a good girlfriend that put her kids in fighting, and she had the most incredible experience. So they're on the mats, and if you've ever been around little boys, they're crazy.
Yeah.
Right? So he's like 8 years old or something like that, 10 years old. And he's on the mat doing great. Then he comes to his mom, and he kind of is giving his mom a hard time. And he sort of like, kind of like pushes his mom a little bit, like little kids do, And she chastises him, and the instructor sees it and looks over at the kid and calls him over and says, "What is your mom?" He goes, "Family." "What do we never do to family?" "Hit our family." "What do we do with our family?" "We protect our family."
Oh,
no. And then he goes, "If you ever do that again, and I ever see that again, you are not allowed back on this mat." And she's like, it was revelatory. She's like, that kid never messed up again and never acted out. Because, you know, as a mom, at least from what I can hear my parents tell me, you can tell your kids things until they're blue in the face, but hearing it from an outside influence and one of respect is something totally different. So I think the world would be a better place if more people learned what it felt like to get hit and if words had consequences.
Yeah. As I say this though out loud, I guess the thing I'm most worried about is I don't want to have a kid with like some CTE issue. So I guess that's one thing. I guess if there's not an issue with like concussion central happening, I was in Kung Fu and so were all my siblings. My shout out Sifu Jamie. He came to my birthday party I think up until I was like 21. And like when my dad was deployed was like somebody that like really came in to our lives and like was a great person. So I guess like we had a really good experience with it and my brothers definitely did. And I saw this quote once and I'm totally going to butcher it, but it was something like uncoachable kids make unmanageable adults. And if you see your kid kind of like getting coached on the sidelines, like that might be really difficult for you as a parent. But honestly, like it's probably going to work out pretty well for them in the end. Just moving on like into the workspace as an adult, and that I do think that's like an interesting perspective.
I mean, I can understand why you wouldn't want to put your kid in MMA, like getting kickbox.
I'm thinking like Conor McGregor style.
Yeah, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is really wrestling. So the likelihood of that's pretty small is my understanding. But, you know, where I want to end here for everyone listening is, so Mike Chandler had this quote that I loved that I want to leave you guys with, my friends. And it's, I don't want to just be a great fighter, but also be a great man. And I think you can become a great man by first being a great fighter. I think this is something to ruminate on and to think about, can all of us learn a little bit more about how to take a punch to the face and the consequences of running our mouth from people who know how to punch faces. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being you, a builder in a world of consumers, a doer. I see you, and I think you are a big deal. See you next time.
You know that I got it, no need to look all in a bag. Stunting like this cause I work so hard, I'm the best, I only speak facts. If I say that I have it, you know that I got it, no need to look all in a bag.
Your brain is creating your reality, but your brain is not trustworthy. And so for me, the rule is don't trust your brain.
How much of the things that we are told about food and medicine are a lie or wrong?
Most of it. I'm going to punch through all the noise, but then we're going to put all the science into me. It's kind of insane as an intelligent species that we would willingly do things that would shorten our life or cause death.
He has this wild lab that's like in his house. And so you'll see on the interwebs that I played around with it, there's one that you sit on and it's it tightens your pelvic floor and your rectum.
Oh my God.
You sit on this stool.
Brian Johnson is just not the same as everyone else. He was severely depressed when he founded, scaled, and then eventually sold a company where he pocketed about $300 million. He created a helmet that tracks his brainwaves and actually how old his brain is. And that isn't even actually the craziest part about this guy. He created an entire anti-aging protocol that runs his life according to the algorithms that he and his doctors have determined. He actually doesn't care about how anyone now or at all sees him. He actually only cares about the future. And in fact, he shares just about all of this on the internet, even how he's thinking about sex and all the things that he is going to measure from them. But every time he shares something about his sexual routine or how he injected Botox into his penis, somebody responds with something like this. Yeah, but have you had sex lately? So I first got connected with him when I said, well, first they'll laugh, then they call you crazy, and then they ask you how you did it. And we started DMing back and forth. And what Brian said to me resounded, that discipline is freedom and freedom is superior to enslavement by pleasure. That actually is the happiest that he's ever been. So after all of his commercial success, he actually started another company, which was a $100 million fund to invest in things to progress the ability for humans to never die, or as he says, don't die. And then founded Kernel, this helmet that he has here that allows him to measure his brain waves and how old it is. What's fascinating is his routine that he talks about. 11 pills every day, wearing a baseball cap that shoots red light into his scalp,
collecting his own stool samples and monitoring nighttime erections. He even gets his family involved, with his son at one point transferring his blood into his father to see if he could live longer, and doing the same thing to his dad and actually lowering his dad's biological age. But I'm not sure any of that is actually the most interesting part about Brian. The most interesting part about Brian is why he's doing all of this and what you and I can learn from it. And so if you right now are thinking about, how do I change my life? It's not the tactics that you're going to get here. It is the mental frameworks that will allow you to do whatever tactics you want to change your life. This is Brian Johnson, the man who thinks that you do not actually have to die.
Bring the band in. Let's go.
Do you have a personal grandest ambition that is the most important to you? And is it living forever, or is it more than that?
I guess like I like mapping history and looking at a different era on how they mapped out ambition. And then if you take 2024 and you pose the question, what is the most ambitious undertaking that our species could undertake, what would it be?
And do you think the answer is to live forever, at least in this moment? Or to live longer?
That's the 0th step, is, don't die is the most played game by every human, by every living being, on every animal, every plant, every human. It's don't die every second of every day. And so it's played more than capitalism. It's played more than religion. It is the most played game. And then above don't die, then we choose whether we want to make money or be adherents to religions, or whether we want to do our various things. But it's all premised on don't die.
Do you think that you're attracted to it because it is the most played game, which means that you have the most competition, which means it might be the hardest game?
No, I think it's interesting because my education is primarily from biographies. And I like reading throughout history and looking at a person in their time and place, and they identified something impossibly hard to do. And then they're able to see the thing and then do it. And at the time, people thought they were crazy or that they were unintelligible to that time and place. But then their thing became inevitable and normalized, and we just forget that it was ever crazy in the first place. And so if you take that notion and you apply it right now, then if you say, what is the most ambitious, craziest thing we can imagine as a species? And one is don't die, but two is, how big is consciousness? We know what it feels like to learn and to crawl and walk and run and to fall in love and to have heartbreak. And we have these certain things we know. But just like if you pose this question a few hundred years ago, how big is reality? You would have gotten an answer that would have dramatically underestimated the size of the microscopic world, the size of the universe. We're living in the fraction of what real reality exists. And so I wonder if the same question could be applied to our consciousness. How big is our conscious capabilities? Are we living in a fraction of its ability? And as we start applying tools of artificial intelligence and biological engineering and add new chemical interactions, could we be on the verge of this opening up a frontier of experience we can't imagine?
Do you think that a lot of people don't ponder questions like this because they never achieved post-economic success? And so the fact that you sold the company for $800 million, achieved what most people, that would be the most interesting thing about them, would be that. And I think a lot of people think, when I hit X, I will be Y, which is happy, fulfilled, whatever. And so you hit that and then went on to this next thing. Do you think you would still be asking these questions if you hadn't been post-economic or really rich, in other words?
Yeah, I mean, it's the game I've wanted to play since I was 21. So I made the goal. When I was 21, I told everyone I was going to do something that would change the course of humanity. I mean, I'm 21, I'm naive. Like, what do I know? And that's ridiculous to say as a 21-year-old. Like, how's that even? But that's just what I cared about. And it's what I wanted to do. And I didn't know what to do. So I said, I'm going to make money first. And then with money, go out and try to figure out what to do. So it's been something I've been working on explicitly for 25 years.
I have this other mentor that I've had for a few years now, Bill Perkins, Die with Zero.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because I think one of the most impactful things you can do as a young person is get around people who make your brain sort of expand to a point of discomfort. My thinking is so much smaller than yours. And for most people, they're barely getting by. Yeah. When somebody tells them that they could even achieve a millionaire status, or they could be free, or they could have a six-pack, that almost seems like too far. Mm-hmm. Was there some moment where your brain flipped like that you remember?
It was when I was living in Ecuador in extreme poverty, came back to the US and reality had just changed for me.
And why?
After being among them, nothing mattered to me except the contribution I could make to the species. I didn't care about making money for money's sake. I didn't have aspirations of buying a big home or an expensive car. I just wanted to improve people's lives. It was just this burning desire. It lit and it's never gone out. It's just gotten stronger. And it honestly feels like it drives me. Like even when I don't, it's still there and it pushes me past my own comfort. It's an undescribable relationship of like what is happening inside of me and then how does that manifest with what I'm actually doing.
So if you were going to try to replicate that experience for somebody else and to make them think bigger than they could even imagine and maybe get on a health journey similar to yours, are there words of wisdom that you would give somebody to try to kickstart an Ecuador in their mind?
Yeah, I do this with my 18-year-old, my son. To his credit, he is attentive, he's curious, and he's willing to listen. And he's trying to figure out what game does he play in life. Because he's wise in that he's listened that you're born into games in society. Like you're born as an American, you're born into capitalism, you're born into like all these norms. And then we learn them and they become invisible. So we don't realize we're actually in games we didn't choose to play. We're just playing it. And then we try to become number one, if you're competitive in one of those different tracks. And so what I've tried to suggest to him is don't assume that any game being played in society is your game. Extract yourself, evaluate them for what they are. I guess I would summarize that and say, don't try to be number one, try to be zero. And number one is like you're going for rank. In a given game, you're trying to beat other players. A zero is, this is like a different concept, zero is principal thinking. You're trying to come up with a new idea, a new game to play. And so I guess the advice would be try not to feel overpowered by societal expectations of what they want you to play.
So in frame, if you were in front of somebody, who was unhappy in some way, shape, or form in their life, or maybe even happy but really striving, how do you break the frame? Do you go, do they first have to sit and even go, okay, well, here's one game I'm playing, which is I'm in finance. Why are you in finance? Here's one game I'm playing. I'm dating somebody. Do you want to be dating somebody? What does dating mean? Like, how do you put that into practice? Okay, so let's start with the most basic thing. We all have thoughts. I learned this when I was depressed, that I would have thoughts that would say, Brian, life is not worth living, and you might want to kill yourself. In fact, you really do want to kill yourself. In fact, that's the only thing that gives you pleasure is the ideation of killing yourself. So in that moment, when I learned that I am not my thoughts, that my brain was generating these observations and suggestions and even statements, that I could observe them and say, thank you, brain, for making that observation. I know that you're not me, so I'm not going to act on that, or am I going to acknowledge that as truth? And so you are not your thoughts. And so in any situation, because your brain is creating your reality, and if you just accept them when they land, then you're going to play the game your brain tells you, but your brain is not trustworthy. Absolutely not trustworthy. And so I know with my thoughts, in any given situation, I will disregard the first 5 or 6 thoughts I have on anything, because I know my brain's like just trying to situate itself. And even then, it's going to have critical errors of biases and all kinds of assumptions. And so that's the very first game. And so because if you're walking into dating or career selection or something, if you can't catch the first layer, which is your mind is creating this false reality for you, then you'll be stuck downstream from that. What about the hippie dippies in Austin where I'm located who say, but just listen to your gut. Your first reaction is right. Yeah. How do you push back on that, or do you? It's a bit of a too simplistic of a rule to universalize. That is not to say that intuitions are not valuable. Like your body's legit doing computation, doing pattern matching. And you're probably able to generate wisdom that your conscious mind can't. And so it's not that it's not good, it's just that it's a data point among a larger set of data points. And some people I think will encourage that go with your first decision and then don't look back. Others will say, be more mindful. It's probably individual, but
There's not a clean answer because people are trying to simplify the complexity of life. And they're trying to say, like, here's a rule. And so for me, the rule is don't trust your brain. And then, of course, if someone says, okay, how do I not trust my brain? That just made things worse for me. Like, now it's really problematic. But it invites you to start a new game. So for example, if you learn that we each have 188 proven cognitive biases. They're shortcuts our mind makes to try to make sense of a really messy reality. And so your brain is always making these shortcuts to help you make sense, but then the trade-off is like it may not be as accurate. So like confirmation bias. If I'm trying to find something what I really believe about a new concept, I'm going to find information. If it confirms what I want to believe, yep, I accept it. And if I find information that challenges my belief systems, I'm going to reject it. And so just being aware of that. And to me, that's been the single most valuable practice I've ever maintained, is knowing that I cannot trust my own mind. Because once you start from there, then you can't trust others. You can't trust institutions. So who can you trust? And that then that starts the game of like how to build the life you want to build. Because otherwise, you're going to probably be disappointed in the process of trusting other forms of authority.
It's so good. I think what's interesting is you're obviously very smart. You sold a company for hundreds of millions of dollars. You've had a lot of traditional success, as we would define it in today's day and age. And what else I think is interesting is usually when that happens, people then have a lot of opinions and maybe they go out in the world and they try to assert those opinions on others. But you've actually done something very different. You've said, I am going to turn myself into a singular action of my opinions at this current stage. I'm not going to try to assert it on others. I'm going to assert it on myself with like second or third order effects on that are only really applicable to you. And one, I think that's really rare. You have questioned pretty much all medical institutions, maybe even food institutions across the US. And so I was curious, since you are a living embodiment of, watch what I do, not what I say, how much of the things that we are told about food and medicine are a lie or wrong?
Most of it.
Really?
Yeah, most of it. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Everyone's trying their best to figure it out. I don't think it's because of malice. I don't think it's because pharma is some kind of evil, group trying to take over the world. They're doing their thing, and everyone is. Doctors are, institutions are. So I don't assign any malice. People legit are trying to figure out the right move. And so that's what I was trying to solve is there's so much confusion around health and wellness. And I wanted to say, I'm going to punch through all the noise. We're going to look at every single scientific study ever published on anti-aging and lifespan. We're going to rank them according to the power laws. And then we're going to put all the science into me, one person, and we're going to measure me as the most measured person in the world. And then we're going to see what we get, like what happens. And then I'll make the whole thing for free for everyone.
Explain what a power law is.
It's where you get 80% of the benefit for 20% of the effort. If I want to be in good health, let's just say I'm not trying to solve an urgent problem, I just want to be in good health, then the list of things you could do are hundreds. Currently, culturally, it's interesting to like cold plunge or sauna or like celery juice or like take your thing. There's hundreds of things that you could do. And we try to say, we're not going to follow fads. We're going to follow scientific evidence. How do you punch through all the noise and say, tell me exactly what to do according to the very best science, I'll do that. And so we don't want to mess around with things that aren't effective. We don't want to do something because it's culturally cool. We want to actually increase lifespan. So we tried to really use science and measurement. We tried to basically make the best health protocol in human history and then make the whole thing available for free for everybody.
What do you think in the next 10 years, to simplify again, we will look back on that we do today and think, oh my God, that's the tobacco of today?
Yeah.
Is there one thing? Are there three? What are they?
Our entire reality. So this is my prediction so just for context setting, let's imagine we travel back in time to 1870 and we can whisper something in their ears. So we say, there are these new ideas about these microscopic objects that cause infection and potentially death. They're called germs. Your eyes can't see them, but they actually exist, and you can do things to stop them, like wash your hands and have other kind of hygienic practices. Now, if you're in the 1870s, you're going to say, that's stupid and that's nuts. If you're open-minded, you may say, okay, tell me more. Now, it turned out germs are real. They actually do cause infection, and there's hygiene practices that help you increase your ability to survive infections. And so if we pull the thought experiment forward and we say, let's say the 25th century can whisper into our ears, what do they say to us?
What do you think they say?
I think they say, you're in the eve before the creation of superintelligence. And the intelligence you're creating is growing at a speed faster than you can comprehend. That renders your ability to predict the future to zero. You cannot see. You're up against a wall of fog. Now, this has been the first time that we have ever had this experience because Homo sapiens have always said, I can look at the past and see how things have been. Yes, there may be a discovery like germs or like penicillin or the computer or the internet that may surprise your inability to predict, but generally speaking, the future is somewhat predictable because things change rather slowly and like to some degree of predictability. That's no longer the case. We can make guesses on what we think the true characteristics of intelligence may be, but really we don't know. And so for the first time in the history of Homo sapiens, we are challenged in saying anything about the future, including what we want, what we like, what we dislike, what we prefer, what our ideals are, what our morals are, what our ethics are. We are no longer going to be the authority. Now, people are going to like fall on multiple sides of the spectrum. People say, we are going to tame AI, we're going to control AI, we're going to build the world we want. I can't imagine a situation where we humans are still the architects of intelligence in some duration of time.
Now, before you were able to have ideas this big that have repercussions for generations, you talked about it there for a minute, but you have been public about being extremely depressed, suicidal, and at your lowest, and building a huge company despite all of that. What changed specifically that you think could be replicable for other people?
Yeah.
Besides the zeroth principle thinking.
It was so easy in retrospect. 10 years, I tried everything to fix my depression. Like you name it, I tried it.
For 10 years?
For 10 years. Wow. And then I did two things that fixed it. I left my church and I got a divorce. And those two changes just made it evaporate. So it was environmental and it was contextual.
So if you were to give advice to, let's say, your kids or the next person, before almost any of the blueprint, is it get your power of place and community right and your person or partner right? Yeah. Like, do you think those are even more fundamental than the health aspects?
Yeah, or I'd say if I could speak to myself, I would say, and I was trying to help myself problem solve, I would say, what do you feel paralyzed by? And once you identify that, then what is the strength you feel that this thing has upon you? Like in that moment, leaving my church, my religion, like my existential existence felt unimaginable. And leaving my marriage with my 3 kids, I was like an all-in dad. I worked really hard. And so my identity was so built up into that. So those things felt impossibly hard to break. And so how trapped do you feel and how impossibly hard do they feel to break? And if you can identify those two things, you probably can put your finger on the thing that's, potentially responsible. Now, not always. This is for my case, but that definitely was what kickstarted this next phase of my life. And so others are just genuinely in a really bad spot. And for them, I would say, try your very best to get your basics right. Like go to sleep on time, like make sleep your number one life priority, do well on your diet and exercise, and just try to get the basics in place as your number one life priority. Probably has the most powerful starting point change.
Quick little side note here. Those two things hit home like a gut punch. I was married before, got divorced, and my religion used to be finance at a company with a bunch of people who had ethics and morals that weren't aligned with me anymore, but I couldn't figure out why. I used to think that you just felt sick all the time after you ate, and that it was normal to not sleep very much, and that in fact, you could be in a relationship and fight all the time and have issues with alcohol. And then I quickly realized when I got divorced and I got out of that company that that's not normal, or it doesn't need to be your normal. And so despite us going into a bunch of tactics and specifics on
how to do this from a health perspective, what resonated with me is, what if the most important thing we do is just who we choose to partner with for life and what we choose to pursue, whether that pursuit is religion or that pursuit is our company or that pursuit is a set of values. If we can get the values and the who right, maybe all the rest can fall into place. Yeah, when I was talking to my husband about interviewing you, he likes to talk back about when I was in finance, and he was like, you looked really different. I had sort of more bags under my eyes. I was taking red eyes nonstop. I really wasn't sleeping very much. I didn't at all value the idea of sleep. And I really didn't eat very thoughtfully. I drank way more than I should have. And so he always likes to remind me that, he's made me younger, which makes me giggle. I think you're right. You had a quote the other day in a newspaper about sleep that I thought was interesting and about its correlation to sort of death as opposed to progress. I think a lot of entrepreneurs think, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Yeah. You only need 4 hours. Yeah. Let me take a stimulus. Get up at 5 a.m. What is your thought on that culture?
Yeah, it's martyrdom culture. And this is, if you want to try to reach sobriety of thought, anyone in life, like you and I right now, could both say 1,000 things about right now. We could talk about the politics. We could talk about world affairs, we could talk about business, we could make so many observations about this time and place, the dramas that are happening in the world. So that's a valuable thing to offer insight as it relates to here and now. The other way to think about reality is to say, what does the 25th century observe? And that has this really nice effect of washing away all the noise of this moment. Just like we think of the 15th century, we think 10 things happened during that entire century. 99% of what happened is washed away. We don't care. We want to know about the big advances that push things forward. And so when you take a question like, what is current culture around sleep and, hustle culture and things like that, you can try to approach the topic by in the bubble of this moment. But if you seek clarity of thought in the 25th century, and that's when I come back to, the 25th century is going to say, you're about to give birth to superintelligence. None of your silly games matter anymore. You need to re-architect society around this new philosophical structure of don't die. The only objective is that intelligence continues to thrive in this part of the galaxy, but your games of martyrdom are basically a death cult, and you normalize to it and you can't see it.
You've talked about a lot of different ways to decrease your blood pressure to a level of an 18-year-old. So if I kind of zoom out and look overall at people like my father and most people who are struggling with blood pressure, this is very tactical, but what would you say to them? Is the answer just go and get pharmaceutical drugs?
You can use drugs, yes. You can also significantly improve that through diet, sleep, exercise. And usually when these kinds of questions come up, it comes back to the basics. You can do more esoteric, expensive therapies, but the headline with Blueprint is that it's $2 million a year. It's not. It's like $1,500 a month, which includes your groceries. It's just expensive for me because we measure. It's that quantification which is so expensive, and the research. Yeah. But the actual doing it is very low cost. And so, diet, sleep, exercise, what people already know, it's not sexy and it's very hard to do. And that's why I think most people just don't do it.
Yeah, and it's hard for companies to make money off of it, which means that the incentive and structure to sell you on it is also not there in the same way there is quicker fixes.
That's right. Yeah. Who's making money when you sleep well?
Yeah, exactly. Not very many people.
Actually, your employer does. They just don't acknowledge it.
That's true. Yeah, it's much easier to acknowledge the person that stays longer. I'm guilty of this as well, as opposed to what is the actual output level. Yeah. But that's really comes from a society not measuring.
That's right.
And so, why do we like work hustle culture? Because it's very hard as a leader of a company to measure every single employee with a KPI to their ROI to the company.
Yeah.
That's actually hard. In the same way that why does Blueprint cost $2 million for you? Because you're actually measuring and categorizing everything so that you can verify $1,500 a month is reasonable for somebody else. Right. That would be a better headline that the New York Times would never write about you.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Look back through history. How many times do we look back and do we say, that culture was so on point? Almost never. we look back and we say like, they're idiots, or like, how do they not see this? Or how primitive, or like we make these really harsh judgments as if we are enlightened creatures and they were these primitive animals. But we're just as silly. We're just blind to it. And so you fast forward a little bit in time, the future is going to see us as silly. And if you can take that humble acknowledgement that that highly unlikely that we've reached the apex of intelligence. And it's most likely that everything we do is just absolutely erroneous in so many ways.
Yeah, you had a tweet that fucked with my mind, candidly, a little bit, which was about money. And it was frugality, saving, investing, planning, discipline, admirable money management. Why is it done? Wealth is immortal. Possibilities of our longevity are shifting. Maybe our thinking will shift too, which made me start realizing, oh, why do we value money? Because we think it lasts beyond us. But we do not believe inherently that health lasts beyond us. Ipso facto, we put less value on it. I don't know why, but that really opened up something for me. What else would you say on that?
Yeah, we are a species that craves immortality. We do. We crave it through our children, through money, through legacy. We crave it through accomplishments. And I'm suggesting that true immortality, or don't die, may be the replacement for all these other games we've been playing. That there's a new reality in front of us.
Yeah, you don't have to leave your name, Rockefeller, on the building of a college campus if you can, in fact, continue forward. You do that because you don't want to be, we all want our life to have meant something, because I do think in a lot of ways, Hobbes is right, like nasty, brutish, and short.
Exactly right.
And so if that is what we believe to be true, then why wouldn't we spend time trying to make it all make sense?
Exactly. And this is why these ideas are so provocative and why they generate so much hate, is that people have these knee-jerk reactions and they're defending all their life choices. Because to realize that you've been playing a game your entire life that is about to change and you may start from zero just like everyone else is a hurtful thought. And so instead of confronting it and being open-minded to it, you want to just bury it like we do with all these things that are uncomfortable. And that's why I think that people can't even, the rage I get directed at me is unhinged. And I don't think people even realize why they're so mad. But it's not about me. It's about their situation, their life decisions. And this is not blaming them. This is just like being human's hard and confronting new ideas is hard. And I'm trying to point out what I think is going to be obvious in the future when they look at this moment.
Yeah, I want to close out with one last question here, which was, you tweeted about certain acts that we take now today you think of as committing violence against ourselves, which I think is really powerful, because when you assign words like that, then actions can change. What do you mean by committing violence against yourself that's different than how most people might? Except for the people these days who say words are violence, in which case none of this is relevant.
Yeah, it was a thought experiment I did that a century from now, what would they say that society had done to change reality? And so we as a species have been moving towards increasingly less violence across everything. And I was suggesting that a reasonable continuation would be that right now we commit these acts of self-destruction, like we overeat or we drink or we stay up late, we miss our bedtime. And these things increase our chance of death, they increase our speed of aging, and they increase, probability of disease. And it's kind of insane as an intelligent species that we would willingly do things that would shorten our life or cause death. And we justify it. We say, well, we live only once, so live fast, die young. So we have all these really pretty stories and justifications, but they fall short in the context of where the future's at. And so I basically said, I'm going to say any action that I take that increases my speed of aging, I'm going to label as an act of violence, and I'm going to shift it. And so I'm trying to basically model out what is the future of being human, and I'm trying to live that. If we try to explain the future in like Blade Runner, you go to 2049, you see flying cars, you see droids, but humans are identical. They have the same thought processes, they have the same minds, they have the same tics, they're the same, playing the same games. And they do that because it's the only way to relate a human to another human watching the movie in the early 21st century. And what I'm trying to say is we need models of the future of being human. And I'm trying to show that tangibly so that we can start being the evolution that we imagine.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll say is, I think a lot of you asked me, what does it look like from the outside? And what I think is fascinating is now being on the inside and walking around your house and chatting with you. And we even used some of your equipment.
Yeah.
I put it on and it's 20,000 sit-ups in, 30 minutes, and it's kind of scary, and it makes these movements and shocks you. And as we were sitting there talking while I'm on it, I'm like, this is actually not very bad. In fact, it's like nothing, really. And then, we used it for one on the pelvic floor. And then you were talking about another device you had. And I suppose what I realized sort of sitting here that I think is hard for people to imagine if they haven't touched it is that your life doesn't seem miserable at all. I think people sometimes see your protocol and they think there must be no freedom within this. Yeah. And yet, this is a lot of freedom, actually. I think you're modeling the future of humanity and getting people to shift their mentality by maybe the next stage is also showing them there is so much joy here. I mean, your kids are adorable. Perhaps it doesn't actually have to be that foreign. So I think it's really cool what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks. I would say that I was a slave to my former self. I was a slave to the need for dopamine. I was a slave to the need of my impulses. I was a slave to my emotional needs. I was absolutely in a terrible situation. And I am now more free than I ever have been in my entire life. And I think most people, when they think about it, are in fact slaves to their current selves. And that's uncomfortable. And so they tell pretty stories about this being the way that this is living their best life or whatever. But the human condition by default is being a slave to self, to your emotions, to your thoughts, to your surroundings. And we've built a society of addiction. And so I've finally, for the first time in my life, I've escaped it. In my mind, in my addictions, in society, superimposing its will upon me, whether it be algorithms or food or junk food or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I'm as free as I've ever been for the first time in my entire life.
Incredible. And what an idea that you actually don't have to be your thoughts, that you could be free from base desires continuously, and that you have, as you've talked about, the ability to be a sovereign human and an autonomous man. Pretty cool. So I love this part that Brian talked about, zeroth principle thinking. And I basically said to him at the end of the interview, I was like, man, this has me thinking that there's so much I should be doing that's bigger and that I'm actually playing a little small in some ways. And I was like, but I don't know what to do about that. You're talking about existential crises of humanity and expanding human consciousness. And I'm over here trying to do another deal, trying to hire better, trying to, be better as a wife. And he's like, let me give you a framework. And this framework was really impactful for me. So I hope it is for you too. He goes, draw a box like this. And inside this box, I want you to go around and I want you to talk to a bunch of different people, as many as you can, about what they are doing for work or career or purpose and why they are doing it. So what do you do for work? I'm an accountant. Why? Because I want to make money for my family. Okay, you write that into the box. And then he goes, if you want to be a zeroth principle thinking, anything that's inside of the box you can't do. You have to go to true blue ocean, what is outside of it. Can you do something that nobody else is talking about? Because that's where it's not competitive. And why I loved this is because in my business, at least right now, I'm thinking in lots of different ways. God, I just feel like we're hand-to-hand combat. We're just fighting against all these other people who are trying to do something just like us. They copied us in some way. And then now they're like little ankle biters at me. And if you guys have felt like that too, it's really hard. The famous saying is, the only thing that you know for sure in a knife fight is that you're both going to get cut. And sometimes that's what it feels like when you're working inside of the box. I want to double click on trolls here for a second with Brian. So he gets crazy hate on the internet, incredible amounts of hate. People call him a cult leader. They say horrible things about him and his son. I mean, stuff that I can't even imagine. And, I looked up at him and I was like, kind of seems like you like the hate. It seems like you like the trolls a little bit. And he kind of looked back at me and he's very calm and zen-like. And he said, well, better than being irrelevant. He's like, much better to be known and thought after than ignored. And I thought about that for a second because he said it sort of flippantly and very calm. And it reminded me of this famous Ted Turner quote, which is, he said about the press, you can say any negative thing you want to say about me, but make sure you spell my name right. And there's just an energy there that I think is worth taking home with this idea that if you're going to do anything interesting, people are probably going to troll you. And Brian has famously said many times, I don't care about what anybody thinks about me in the 21st century. I care about what the 25th century thinks about the actions that I am taking today. Could you even imagine a reframe better than that? Like the next time somebody is trolling you, the next time somebody says something hateful, the next time somebody says you can't, imagine not even caring what they think, but not caring what anybody who is alive today thinks, because maybe this entire generation doesn't understand where you're trying to go. That would be incredibly freeing, wouldn't it? I'm going to try it. Let's talk about what I'm calling the deal of the week, or gangster marketing moves by Brian. First of all, the guy's kind of a marketing genius, which I think makes sense given he made a bunch of money before doing all this. Case in point number one, he started this idea of zeroth principle thinking. And so he created sort of a whole new terminology. And what does he do to really hammer that home? He changes his name on Twitter, or X now, to Zero. So of course, that's going to have people asking about it and remembering it nonstop. He also has a link to a site where he explains zeroth principle thinking. And what does that do? It allows him to immediately say that anybody who doesn't understand what he's doing is not operating from the degree of principle that he is. Really, really smart. Also, I remember like in the beginning thinking, this guy is naked on the internet a lot. Like he's like naked with kettlebells in a garage with like a forest in the background. And I remember thinking, that's weird or like different. And then I realized what he would do. He would kind of come up with this like, campaign that the New York Times would pick up, and then he would launch a product afterwards. It's kind of the Kardashian effect, essentially. They knew that to draft off the cultural conversation meant they could go viral with one thing, and then with all the virality getting pushed at them, they would sell something. And I think that's exactly what Brian is doing. He's selling ideas and also products. In fact, because he was getting so much hate on the internet, he launched an olive oil company because he thinks that the delivery of olive oil is really important if it's done a particular way. And so he had an olive oil called Blueprint. People started calling it snake oil. What did he do? He changed the name of the company to Snake Oil. Brilliant marketing play where he plays directly into the hate that he's getting as opposed to bowing down to it. Another person that's incredible at this that nobody likes to give credit to is Trump. He would often say something ridiculous and then allow that to become a platform for him to hold the megaphone as opposed to somebody else. Really, really smart. That's why I think Brian might be the Twitter gangster marketer of our time. Brian did not start out as a genius. In his mind, when we were walking around and I was looking at all the books that filled his shelves, I said, have you always just been really smart? And he said, no. In fact, I was super challenged in school. I didn't get good grades. I struggled a lot. I found it sort of insufferable. And, I didn't score well on standardized tests. So I have no idea if my IQ is high or low, but he's like, I wouldn't be surprised if it's super normal. And I think that should be freeing because look at what this guy has been able to do despite sucking at school and potentially not having some off the charts IQ. I then asked him, well, are you really good at math? And he said, no, I'm not good at math. I'm like very average at math, which I just sort of assumed like guy builds fintech company, sells for almost $1 billion. Now is like spending $2 million a year on changing the world and all these complex systems. He must be brilliant. And his take is actually different. He was like, no, I actually am not sure that I'm smart. He's like, in fact, I think it's really hard for me to process information. I have to actually rearrange it in a way that my brain fits. And he's like, and I'm okay with that, but it isn't like I very easily process things. And there's a lot of freedom in that. And then lastly, he showed us his penis clip that he measures his erections with at night, which, I was like, Brian, I'm not touching that piece of equipment. He jokingly, was like, I know, of course. As he was talking about it, what came to me was that he is really trying to alter this puritanical viewpoint that I think that we have, that our conversations around sex and our, different anatomical parts has to be sexualized as opposed to just measured. And so I don't actually think that he's doing anything that crazy. He's just normalizing a conversation that we have historically not allowed or thought was normal or appropriate for people to be having. There's a lot of beauty and good in that, in taking the things that we gave away our power to. We gave away our power to talk about our anatomy to doctors and to the medical complex. We gave away our ability to measure ourselves to doctors and the pharmaceutical and medical complex. There's really nowhere where you can grab all of your historical medical data and put it all in one place in order to figure out how you are measured or marked at a human. And instead you go to the doctor and they go, yeah, you're kind of fine by these metrics. And instead he's taking that all back. And he's like, no, I'm going to measure it all and I'm going to figure out what is important. And I think there's something really beautiful in that, in becoming his own owner of his own body And maybe we aren't really the owners of ours. And this channel, we obsess on one thing, which is how to get more ownership for each of us. And I hope you felt like I did a little bit more to that after this conversation.
Talking with Brian Johnson was insane. And I thought instead of having a deal this week, Brian Johnson is actually kind of the deal. So we're going to break down his business, all of the businesses that he's built, and then currently what is he working on today. So basically, Brian founded Braintree. Then he bought Venmo. Actually, you guys have all used that for only $26 million, which in the scheme of things, not that much. Grew it like crazy and processed 12 billion payments, then sold that bad boy as a combined entity for about $800 million, took home $300 million himself, and sort of walked away. Fascinating part about that, he then creates a $100 million fund, the OS fund, which invests in a bunch of technologies that now Brian's using to try to live forever, including a company called Kernel, which was a neurotech company, designed helmet. This one you can see here if you're watching. I played around with it yesterday. And his goal was basically to detect cognitive issues early. Then in 2021, he announced what's called the blueprint. I think we should walk people through the blueprint really quick. It's been all over the internet before, but Rachel, turns out you follow this guy and are all up in the blueprint. So walk them through what it is super high level really quickly.
The blueprint is his public science experiment, basically, to try to reverse his aging. He's about 45, or at least he was when this came out, I think. He's trying to reverse his aging to the age of 18, which is about the age that his son was when he started this. And he's doing this by basically spending I think it's $2 million a year on a bunch of different experiments. And this includes things like hundreds of tests, blood transfusions, no sex after 8 p.m. And obviously, most people would not be able to do this. So he's trying to take it all on for himself. And he's documenting this entire thing over on YouTube, on a blog. And he's kind of teaching people the ways in hopes of making himself age backwards.
Yeah, he has this wild lab that's in his house. And so you'll see on the interwebs that I played around with it. There's one that you sit on. It tightens your pelvic floor and your rectum.
Oh
and so
my God.
You sit on this stool and it pulsates. And
Are you saying you did Kegel exercises with Brian Johnson?
I did. And I was like, Brian, the thing is, am I about to orgasm in front of you and my employee? Because I'm going to feel weird about that. And he was like, it's highly unlikely. And I was like,
that is great. Wait, so why does he have?
Well, he has a whole lab because, a couple things that's interesting that I had never thought about before is he says that, I'm going to paraphrase, so sorry, Brian, if I get this wrong, but basically that the longer you can delay your inability to procreate, the longer you can live, which makes sense. As long as you can continue to procreate, the human body wants to stay intact, delay cellular degeneration, etc. And so your pelvic floor and your rectum, I guess, are important for that. So you sit on it and it zaps you. And so he's like, you're going to want to move around. So I'm like,
Oh my God, that cracks. So is this something that is scientifically backed?
I haven't checked the science on this. Somebody should. I'm sure it's all over Brian Johnson's thing, but I used it and it wasn't that painful. He's like, I'm on this when I'm on meetings. I'm like, I'm dying. Could you imagine him on Zoom just getting rectally zapped every 7 seconds?
That's gotta... I can't say what I was going to say.
Then I did his machine that you put on your abs that does 20,000 sit-ups in 30 minutes.
Is that real? I feel like that was a big thing in the 80s or something like that. You remember when it, I don't know. I feel
I tried to do it here in Austin. A friend of mine told me that it worked for her, and I went and signed up for it, and it was $3,000 for three sessions. I'm like, I better walk out with an 8-pack or I want a refund. And I didn't walk out with an 8-pack, but he does it 3 days a week. And he's got abs, so I don't know. It could work. What else did I see that he has there? He has sort of a famous breakfast with mushrooms and this nutty pudding and stuff that he does.
Did you try it?
That he I didn't try the nutty pudding because I don't know. I felt rude. You don't want to go to his house. You're like, the thing is, yuck. So the Latina in me couldn't let that happen. But then also, he's like, do you want to see my erection measuring device? And I was like, yes, I do.
Obviously. You're like, whip it out. Let's see it.
Yes, I do. I was like, but I do not want to touch that one, Brian. He was like, obviously.
Is that just a life vest that he wears? For his penis?
That'd be a life
I don't know, a little mini life vest. I was reading a Time magazine article.
Floats it up.
Yeah. I was reading the Time magazine article, and that's how they described it. And now I want to know. She had so many images.
I know. Yeah. I think I have some video of it. No, basically it looks like a little Like a little, I don't know, like a Lego with like a string on it.
Oh, so it's not like an Aura ring?
No.
Oh.
No, and you just kind of like the string goes on it and then it measures something. A life vest.
We're going to keep that. We're going to keep the conversation moving.
Seems happy. And I asked him if he was happy. He said he was happy, happier than he's ever been. But what I think is really interesting is this regime. I mean, when I told my parents about this, maybe you guys can relate, you know, they were like, they had a visceral reaction to Brian Johnson. It was like, why would he live like this? Why would he do this? You know, I just want to live my life. That's so weird. You know, they're kind of like making fun. They'd be pissed if I heard this, so I hope they don't listen. But I get why, because I think Brian Johnson is putting in people's face their bad decisions every day. And if he's right, then like, I don't know, 60% of the decisions we make every day are slowly killing us. And that's actually really hard to take in, right? And especially with a statement like every thing that lessens my life is an act of violence against my body. Well, what he's basically then saying, and that I think people could take that way, is, well, you are committing acts against your body that are violent nonstop. And so I see why people get so visceral of reaction against him. But it honestly surprised me because I don't think my parents are internet trolls, but they were not into it. You know, they were freaked out about it.
Well, nobody wants to be wrong.
Nobody wants to be wrong. And, you know, I think if deep down inside, you know the things that you shouldn't be doing for your health. I know the things I shouldn't be doing for my health. And we're choosing to do them or not do them anyway. And we can like write a story to ourselves about why that is. You know, you eat the Cheetos, you have the drinks, you do whatever because, you know, you only live once. YOLO, right? But there's also another side to it. And I think it's wild the amount of willpower this guy has. The other thing that's cool, you know, then my parents were like, well, he's probably trying to, you know, make money or build a business. I'm like, first of all, I don't have $300 million hanging around. But if I did, it'd probably be sufficient. And so, like, it's not like the guy needed to go out and have a new side hustle of, like, getting berated on the internet. He was already pretty famous and rich, so I don't think that was necessary. But it is wild, the businesses that he's creating, right? Like, we were talking about them. So he's got an olive oil company that he changed the name to Snake Oil, wink, wink, and takes every day. He's got now 11 new products. I actually talked to him. I sent him a picture of my grandma, who's 99. It was like, she's still motoring, but we should get her on the protocol. And he's like, I'll pay for her to be on the protocol. He's like, we could document it. I'm like, yeah, but what if I kill grandma? Which like kind of freaks me out. So I don't know about that.
So if grandma's been like run over by a reindeer, it's like grandma's been murdered by a biohacker. Yeah. Well, I heard he doesn't like to be called a biohacker.
That will be the YouTube title for this podcast. Then obviously he has a ton of different products that I think he could come out with in the future because he's got this wild media empire. You know, people give us a hard time for being on the internet, right? Like, why would you do this if you had all this wealth? Why would you tell other people how to buy businesses if you already bought businesses? But he's sort of the same way. I mean, I think you followed a little bit what he's doing on YouTube and with the Don't Die meetings. Is there anything there that you think is interesting for people?
With all of his YouTube videos? Yeah. I do. One thing that I really appreciate is that he documented another woman that's also doing the blueprint with him, who I believe worked for him at one point, possibly, but she's fairly young. Something that I'm still kind of nervous about. I also am interested in this kind of stuff. I know I'm making a lot of fun right now, but I think anybody that's interested in health or the wellness space would be interested in him and has seen these videos before pop up. But I am a little nervous about only having one person kind of test himself and do this, because I almost feel like I'm putting all my eggs in one basket when I'm taking the advice that he's giving, because he's the only person that's getting A/B tested.
Yeah, it's a good point. Immediately when you say Brian Johnson and basket, I think of his Easter image. Have you seen that?
Yeah, just yeah. Speaking of,
good, by the way, with an Easter basket with a bunch of eggs in it, right where you could imagine. He's got a sense of humor, which I appreciate. But I think you're right. You know,
it's like him and that woman, and then I guess his son. So I will say, putting my eggs in three baskets. But that still
plus
feels...
his dad. I think he's having his dad.
Oh, I didn't know
actually.
That.
Yeah. He transfused his blood. Is that the right word?
Yes, for his son, though, I thought.
No, into his dad.
Oh,
and
my gosh.
Decreased his dad's age, too. But wouldn't that freak you out if your parents were like, the thing is...
Blood runs, what is it, thicker than water?
Yeah, it takes a whole new meaning. Yeah, but I thought that was wild. The other thing that I think is interesting about him is he realizes what we already know, which is that attention is the new economy. If he compared $300 million with hundreds of millions of views online, which he's doing with YouTube, with getting the next generation involved, he can create a cult-like movement. So he has these Don't Die meetings where he's had like 500 Don't Die meetings all around the world. people meet up all with the same idea of trying to increase longevity, which is actually really, really cool, because another way to say it would be 500 meetings happen around the world with people who are interested in healthier living decisions, you know? And he just uses a catchy tagline that pisses people off because they're like, why do these people want to live forever? But all it really is, it's like, hey, what if we all tried to live a little bit healthier? You would think that would be a good thing for society. It's kind of backwards that we're so societally warped that we think that this is negative.
I think there are more people that are upset at the idea that living a lifestyle like him that would take away the enjoyment of life. I think that's what they're really mad about. Like, why would they don't think that it's worth living if you live a life that is like his, because to them that depletes them of joy. And I guess you can't really quantify how much somebody really values life without having certain things in it, you know?
Yeah. He has a quote too that I love that's something along the lines of freeing yourself from the prison of desires is like the ultimate happiness. And so I think his response would be a little bit Buddha-like, which would be, well, I just want less things. And because I want less things, I'm actually happier, and I can be very happy and then have a long, healthy life. It was also wild because I asked him, I'm like, you seem very calm. I'm like, do you get mad very often? And he's like, not really. I'm like, do you get upset? You're like, when was the last time you yelled? And he's like, I can't remember. So I don't know. Part of us are just like, we're wired different. You know, I'm a really excitable Latina, so I don't think that would work for me. Now, the last thing I thought that was fascinating, I talked to Brian about where he's going with this business. And like, imagine him launching a health empire on the back of personal experiments where he has skin in the game. So you guys actually know, at least, you know, when you go to a doctor and the doctor is like fat, unhealthy, like divorced, and giving you health advice, sometimes I'm like, I don't know, man, what are you doing? And with this guy, at least, you know, he's doing it all, which I think has like perfect alignment. So I bet he built something giant. It kind of reminds me, I texted him, I was like, you know, you should look at what Gwyneth Paltrow did with Goop, because it was similar. I mean, remember all that crap she got when she launched?
Yeah. I do feel like there could be a funny meme going around on the internet that's not made yet. That's like Goop girlfriend, Brian Johnson boyfriend.
Oh, this is good. Somebody make that. Tag us on that on Twitter. Also, like something with like remember when Gwyneth Paltrow talked about the golden yoni? Am I saying that right?
Is that the egg that she put somewhere? Yeah.
Put up your part as a lady?
I'm trying to see it. So I'm looking at olive oil over here on Goop's website, which is by Flamingo Estate, which is a really cool company. Flamingo Estate, I think, goes to like famous people's houses and will like say, hey, if you want to make honey and have bees on your property, we'll put it there and it's like better for your property, and we'll sell the honey and say like, oh, it's Gwyneth Paltrow's honey or whatever. So Flamingo Estate, kind of cool company. Goop sells Flamingo Estate olive oil. It is $85. How much do you think Blueprint olive oil costs?
$60.
Okay, let's look. Do you already know this?
No, I'm guessing.
Okay. $60, yeah. Okay.
I actually swear I didn't know that.
Yeah,
but I should have asked him. Yeah, so I think there's something there. I think he could create he could create the tech bro Goop of our age, or even just think about it. What's the healthy dudes company? Like, I don't know that exists. I mean, healthy rich chicks is probably Goop, right? Healthy, like mid-market moms is Jessica Alba, whatever that company is called. Honest.
Okay, I'm thinking just whenever I think of guy health, I think of Equinox.
I think
that's a gym chain.
And that's also like multi-gender.
That's true. I just feel like whenever I hear people talking about it openly a lot, it's Matt.
Yeah. Anyway, I think there's a play there. I don't know what the revenue Gwyneth does now at Goop, but I would imagine it's pretty sizable. And she's really mainstreamed a bunch of stuff that was not mainstreamed prior. I mean, you could give her crap for how expensive some of the stuff is, but like, don't buy it. Go buy a cheaper version somewhere else. And you pay a premium for sort of the content, the knowledge, the luxe version of it.
The last thing I want to talk about, I guess, is I'm interested to see if he comes out with a specific piece of hardware that is something that a consumer that like myself would buy. Like, I wear an Oura ring. It was wildly expensive, but it was still something that like I saved up for. I asked for part of the money for Christmas. I chipped in half. Like, I was like, this is something like almost, I thought of it like a non-negotiable piece of health tech. I really like it. I've had it for quite a few years. It rocks for me. But I could see him like making something like an Oura ring that I could lift in or something.
Yeah.
Would be nice.
I want whatever the machine was that I did. You know, do you know how hard it is as a woman to like get a 6-pack or to get just tighter here? My husband just stops looking at soda, gets skinny. I could run 400 miles every day and not get a six-pack. So I don't know. If Brian Johnson is listening, I think the shout out would be, yeah, we want to live longer, but we also want to be hot. So can we have both?
Like an inside of his medicine cabinet tour, like a Vogue 20, like a Vogue style tour.
Oh, I saw it. It's just a lot of pills.
He doesn't give anything that's like this is my like super good, like, I don't know. I imagine he's like serums and stuff. Like I want him to like goopify himself. Like honestly, Gwyneth needs to go to his house.
Nice.
It does. He does look like he dyes his hair.
Didn't ask. I could have added that to the repertoire.
I could also see him making a wellness club where you have all those Remedy Place, I think, is a wellness club chain. He should make like a wellness club where you can go meet other people that are interested in
the blueprint,
not dying. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And maybe for a premium price, like how much is Equinox? Like $250 a month or something.
Yeah, something like that. The moral of the story, I think, is again, what I hope you took away from Brian Johnson is play bigger games. Wild ideas about the fact that, can you even imagine a mind in which you decide that your entire mission is going to be not to die, and the belief system you have to have locked in to determine that you might even be able to beat like the ultimate thing that beats all humans? And I think that's pretty powerful. And so I like listening to the crazy ones, people like Brian Johnson, who've built something, done it again, and then trying it at an even bigger level. Really, really cool. Thanks for being builders. I see you all, and you are a big deal to me. We'll see you next week. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed and reviewed the podcast, please do. That's how this thing grows. Appreciate all you guys.
That I have it, you know that I got it. No need to look all in a bag. Stunting like this because I work so hard. I'm the best. I only speak facts. If I say that I have it, you know that I got it. No need to look all in a bag.